How to Train Your Dragon. Finding a Black Dragon Egg from Monster Hunter. Chapter 41. Mira hovered high in the air, beating her wings, her golden dragon eyes locked onto the monstrous nightmare on the ground. Her black wing membranes trembled slightly in the wind, and every flap stirred up strong currents of air, scattering the loose stones on the ground. The monstrous nightmare, meanwhile, crouched low. Its thick, grayish-blue scales gleamed coldly in the sunlight, and the sail on its dorsal plate stood tall, resembling two unfurled sails. It continuously let out low growls from its throat, and red flames flickered faintly at the corners of its mouth. Although it instinctively feared Myra's oppressive aura, as a predator, it refused to retreat easily. After all, it had come for revenge, and it was currently furious. Lin sat on Myra's back, his fingers gently stroking the scales on her neck, his mind working rapidly. He recalled the records of the monstrous nightmare in the Monster Hunter world. The dorsal sail of this fanged wyvern species was not just for show but was also a crucial heat dissipation organ. Once the sail was damaged, the heat inside its body could not be dissipated in time. In minor cases, it would be unable to breathe fire. In severe cases, it would suffer self-harm due to energy imbalance. Mira, use dragon breath for a feint attack first, draw its attention. Lin leaned down and ordered softly into Myra's ear. Mira responded with a low growl, suddenly opening her mouth, and a torrent of fiery red flames instantly burst forth. Unlike the dragon breath from her juvenile period, Myra's dragon breath in her growth stage carried terrifying heat and had a larger flame spread. When it hit the ground, the stone slabs were instantly scorched black, and even the air seemed to ignite. This dragon breath did not aim directly at the monstrous nightmare but landed not far in front of it. The bursting flames formed a wall of fire, forcing the monstrous nightmare to retreat repeatedly. Now, Lin's eyes narrowed. He patted Myra's neck. Circle above it. Myra's wings suddenly accelerated, her body like a black lightning bolt, flying rapidly close to the ground. As she bypassed the wall of fire, she flew toward the monstrous nightmare's back. The monstrous nightmare sensed danger and suddenly turned its head, trying to breathe fire to block, but Myra's speed was too fast. As soon as it opened its mouth, Mira was already flying directly overhead. Mira, hold steady. Lin took a deep breath, gripping the dragon saddle tightly with both hands, his legs slightly bent. The moment Mira hovered, he leapt down. The longsword in his hand shone coldly in the sunlight. Using the momentum of his descent, he fiercely slashed toward the monstrous nightmare's dorsal sail. Swish! The sharp blade easily sliced through the connection point between the monstrous nightmare's sail membrane and its body, like cutting tofu. Blood instantly gushed out. Roar! Feeling the intense pain from its back, the monstrous nightmare instantly went berserk. It violently thrashed its body, trying to shake Lin off its back. Lin had prepared for this. The moment he cut the sail, he released the longsword and desperately grabbed the scales on the monstrous nightmare's neck. However, the monstrous nightmare's strength was simply too great, and the violent shaking still flung him hard. Lin crashed heavily onto the ground, rolling several times before stabilizing himself. He coughed repeatedly, clearly having sustained minor injuries. Before Lin could get up, he heard gasps from Hiccup and the villagers coming from the direction of the dragon training arena. Lin. Look out! Lin sharply turned his head, only to see the monstrous nightmare staring at him with blood-red eyes, flames burning even more intensely in its throat than before. The pain of losing its sail drove it completely insane. This time, the flames were stronger than any previous attempt, golden flames sweeping toward Lin like a tide, threatening to completely engulf him. Mira. Lin's heart tightened. Just as he was about to use his dragon-taming power to resist, he heard a deafening dragon roar. Mira swooped down from high altitude, her black wings fully spread like a massive shield, fiercely protecting Lin beneath her. The next second, the monstrous nightmare's flames violently struck Myra's wings. The golden flames instantly swallowed Myra's silhouette, and even the surrounding air became scalding hot. The Vikings in the dragon training arena covered their eyes, unable to watch the tragic scene. 5 breaths later, the flames gradually dispersed. When the smoke and dust slowly settled, everyone was stunned. Mira still stood firmly in place. Although her black wings were somewhat blackened by the smoke from the flames, they were completely undamaged, not even a single scale had fallen off. Lin walked out from under Mira's wing, and looking at the unharmed Mira, a wave of warmth surged through his heart. Mira truly deserved the title, Forbidden Black Dragon. She possessed an absolute natural immunity to fire. Ordinary dragon breath and flames could not harm her at all. The monstrous nightmare was also stunned. Looking at the unharmed Mira, a trace of fear flashed in its eyes. Having lost its dorsal sail, that last burst of flame had exhausted most of the energy within its body. Now, let alone breathing fire, even moving had become somewhat sluggish. Mira seized this opportunity, rushing toward the monstrous nightmare and violently ramming its side abdomen with her massive head. The monstrous nightmare shrieked, stumbling backward, but Mira took the chance to bite its forelimb. Her sharp teeth instantly pierced its thick scales, and blood streamed down Mira's jaw. However, the monstrous nightmare was, after all, a battle-hardened predator, and even at a disadvantage, it still possessed astonishing fighting capability. Enduring the intense pain, its massive jaws, capable of incredible biting force, snapped fiercely toward Mira's head. Mira was forced to retreat, releasing the forelimb she had bitten. The monstrous nightmare took the opportunity to counterattack, using its huge body to ram Mira into a nearby rock. With a rumble, the rock shattered, and Mira was left feeling somewhat dizzy from the impact. Mira. Seeing this, Lin felt a panic in his heart, and the dragon-taming power within him began to surge uncontrollably. He could clearly feel that the energy inside Mira was becoming chaotic due to the collision, and his dragon-taming power seemed to resonate with Mira's energy. A warm stream of energy flowed out of him, slowly injecting itself into Mira's body through the connection they shared. Mira seemed to sense this energy as well. She let out a low roar, and her previously somewhat sluggish body gradually regained vitality, her golden dragon eyes becoming sharp once more. Seeing that Mira hadn't fallen, the monstrous nightmare charged again, its mouth full of fangs wide open. A foul stench rushed toward them. It was clearly trying to bite Mira's throat to end the fight. At this critical moment, Mira leapt backward. Her massive body traced a flexible arc in the air, and at the same time, she violently flapped her wings. The strong air currents sent the loose stones on the ground flying everywhere. Using this momentum, she rapidly ascended, hovering steadily above the monstrous nightmare's head. Immediately afterward, Mira opened her enormous mouth and began inhaling frantically. The surrounding air seemed to be forcibly pulled in. Small stones, withered grass, and even wood chips from the edge of the dragon training arena quickly rolled toward her mouth, forming a small, material vortex. Even the hair of the Vikings in the distance was blown backward by this suction force. That's. Hiccup widened his eyes, and even his breathing became cautious. The next second, Mira's mouth erupted in a dazzling light. First, an extreme heat spread from its mouth, the air seeming to ignite instantly. The distant flagstones even began to glow faintly. The monstrous nightmare instinctively felt a fatal threat, retreating repeatedly, its golden pupils filled with terror. But this was just the beginning. Immediately after, a ball of blue flame, several times larger than the previous dragon breath, spewed from Mira's mouth with a sizzling sound. This was no ordinary dragon breath, but the tribulation fire, containing the primordial power of the forbidden black dragon. As soon as the tribulation fire appeared, the surrounding temperature instantly soared. The wooden railings of the dragon training arena began to smoke, and the monstrous nightmare, terrified, turned and fled, its thick hind legs kicking deep prints into the ground, clearly trying to escape the terrifying heat. But Mira had already locked onto its movements. The tribulation fire, as if alive, chased after the fleeing monstrous nightmare, instantly engulfing its body. Roar. The monstrous nightmare let out a mournful shriek, its voice filled with despair. It tried to struggle, but the temperature of the tribulation fire was too high. Its grayish-green thick scales instantly turned fiery red, then rapidly blackened and carbonized, emitting crackling sounds. Before long, its shrieks gradually weakened, its body twitching continuously in the tribulation fire, eventually collapsing heavily to the ground, completely motionless. After another 5 breaths, Mira slowly retracted the tribulation fire. When the smoke and dust cleared, everyone stared dumbfounded at the scene before them. The monstrous nightmare's massive body lay on the ground, its entire body of scales burned black and brittle, flaking off with a gentle touch. The air was filled with a rich aroma of roast meat, and one could even see the tender meat beneath the damaged scales. Truly, crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. Mira hovered in midair, its black scales gleaming in the sunlight, its golden dragon eyes filled with exhaustion but still carrying a hint of victorious pride, its wings slowly flapping, maintaining a stable posture. Lin walked forward and looked up at Mira. Mira understood, slowly descended, and gently brought its head close to Lin. Lin lightly stroked its head, and Mira comfortably rubbed against his palm, emitting a low purr from its throat. As Lin's palm touched Mira's scales, Mira suddenly raised its head, its golden dragon eyes fixed on the monstrous nightmare's corpse, emitting a low growl from its throat, as if sensing something special. Before Lin could react, Mira suddenly stepped forward, walked to the monstrous nightmare's charred corpse, and its massive claw unhesitatingly grabbed towards the monstrous nightmare's chest. With a tearing sound, the crispy scales and tough flesh were easily ripped open, revealing the not yet fully carbonized muscle tissue inside. The surrounding Vikings gasped in unison, and Hiccup was also stunned, subconsciously saying, "Is Mira hungry?" Lin, however, frowned. He noticed that Mira's actions were not merely eating, its claws were precisely searching within the monstrous nightmare's chest cavity, as if looking for something. A moment later, Mira's claw suddenly lifted, and a fist-sized, pale green jade stone was dug out from the monstrous nightmare's heart area. The surface of the jade stone was smooth, emitting a warm luster. Even stained with blood and charred debris, it could not conceal the faint energy flowing within. What is that? The Vikings in the stands craned their necks, curiously examining the jade stone. Mira stared at the jade stone for 2 seconds, then opened its mouth and swallowed the entire stone. The moment the jade stone entered its mouth, Mira's body trembled slightly, a red light flashed in its golden dragon eyes, and a faint halo appeared on its black scales. The fatigue from the battle seemed to dissipate considerably. Immediately after, as if it had only just smelled the roasted monstrous nightmare, it lowered its head and began to devour the monstrous nightmare's meat in large bites. Sharp teeth tore open the charred skin, revealing the tender flesh inside. Chewing sounds accompanied by satisfied, woof woof, sounds, which surprisingly sounded exceptionally sweet. This is too fierce. Hiccup couldn't help but exclaim, watching Mira wolf down its meal. Lin, however, was thoughtful. Powerful monsters often condense dragon jade containing their own energy within their bodies. That is the core of a dragon's power, greatly beneficial to other dragons. That should be the monstrous nightmare's dragon jade, Lin murmured. I didn't expect Mira to be able to sense the presence of dragon jade. I wonder if there will be any special changes after it swallows it. As Lin pondered, the surrounding Vikings had already eagerly gathered around, their faces full of excitement and curiosity, asking questions in a babble. Lin, how did you do it? You can actually make a dragon listen to you so well. Dragon Rider. You're the legendary Dragon Rider, aren't you? So cool. Is that black dragon your partner? Its flames were too powerful just now. In the crowd, several young Viking teenagers pushed to the front, their eyes sparkling with admiration. Just as Lin was about to explain, Stoic walked over, protecting Hiccup, followed by a limping Toothless. Its tail fin still bore traces of being scorched by flames, its golden slit pupils were full of fatigue, yet it still followed closely beside Hiccup. Toothless, you're exhausted too, Lin said softly to the Night Fury. There's monstrous nightmare meat nearby, it should be rich in energy and good for you. Go eat some and recover your strength. Toothless seemed to understand his words, nodded gently at Lin, then limped to the monstrous nightmare's corpse and began eating alongside Mira. The two dragons nod, occasionally emitting low growls, as if communicating or enjoying the feast. The scene was peculiar yet strangely harmonious. Stoic watched this scene, his face filled with even deeper guilt. He took a deep breath and said to Lin and Hiccup, "Children, I saw the battle just now. Hiccup, I'll never forget the way you flew on Toothless. Now, can you tell me what all this is about? Why did Toothless help you? What is the secret between you and the dragons?" Hiccup glanced at Lin, and after receiving an encouraging look, took a deep breath and slowly revealed his discovery. Father, I actually knew Toothless a long time ago. A few days ago, I accidentally discovered a huge dragon's nest on a volcanic island overseas. Thousands of dragons live there, including deadly natters, gronkles, and perhaps even dragon species we've never seen before. He paused, his tone becoming heavy. I originally thought dragons were cruel and bloodthirsty monsters, but in the dragon's nest, I discovered that they were actually forced to come to Burke Island to snatch food. There's a giant evil dragon in the dragon's nest, it's the ruler of all dragons. We call it the Dragon King. Those dragons must regularly offer food to the Dragon King, or else they will be eaten by it. Burke Island has plenty of food, which is why they attack the tribe again and again, not to destroy, but simply to survive. What? Such a thing exists. Stoic's eyes widened, he clearly couldn't believe his ears. The surrounding Vikings also erupted in a commotion, discussing amongst themselves, how is this possible? Dragons are clearly so ferocious. Hiccup couldn't have been brainwashed by a dragon, could he? What I'm saying is true. Hiccup hastily defended. Astrid and I went to the dragon's nest, we saw the Dragon King with our own eyes, and we saw the helplessness of the dragon group. They are just being controlled by the Dragon King. I can prove it. Just then, Astrid pushed through the crowd and walked to the front, her eyes firm as she said, I did go to the dragon's nest with Hiccup. The dragons there didn't actively attack us, they just wanted to survive. Their previous attacks on the tribe were to offer food to the Dragon King. With Astrid's testimony, the murmurs around them gradually died down. After all, Astrid had always been known for her bravery and honesty in the tribe, so people were willing to believe what she said. Wow! The dragon's nest. Does it live in a volcano? That must be the Red Death. Fishlegs squeezed over, his face full of curiosity. He always loved learning about different dragons. Snotlout scoffed, crossing his arms over his chest. The dragon's nest must be full of danger. But then again, is that Dragon King really that powerful? More powerful than this monster just now? Definitely much more powerful than a monstrous nightmare, Hiccup said seriously. It's huge, has 6 eyes, and is very terrifying. Then aren't we in great danger? Roughnut frowned sharply, reaching out to smack Toughnut on the back of the head, her tone full of fiery impatience. Why aren't you saying anything? If the Dragon King really brings its dragon horde, your paltry skills won't even be enough to get stuck in its teeth. Toughnut rubbed the back of his head, wincing in pain, and glared at Roughnut defiantly but didn't retort. Instead, he pounded his chest and shouted heroically to the crowd, what's there to be afraid of? We have Lin and his black dragon. And Hiccup and Toothless. That monster just now was so powerful, wasn't it still roasted crispy by Mira? No matter how powerful the Dragon King is, it'll still have to face the music. Stoic was silent for a moment. He looked at Lin and Hiccup, then at Mira and Toothless who were still eating, and gradually made up his mind. He knew that what Hiccup and Lin said was true. For so many years, the tribe had been at war with dragons, yet had never truly understood them. Perhaps it was time for a change. Lin, Hiccup, Stoic's tone became serious. I believe what you say. However, the dragons did attack the tribe before, stealing our food and harming our people. Now you say you want to coexist with dragons, I'm afraid the tribe members will find it hard to accept. I understand. Lin nodded, his tone calm. So we need time, and we need action to prove it. First, we must eliminate the Dragon King in the dragon's nest. Secondly, when Hiccup and I were exploring the expanded Burke Island, we discovered a group of herbivorous dragons. At that time, they were being hunted by monstrous nightmares. They are docile and harmless, and they breed annually. We can try to raise them. This would not only provide ample food for the tribe but also a source of tribute for the dragon horde, preventing them from stealing the tribe's food again. Raising herbivorous dragons. Stoic was stunned. Can that work? Of course it can. Hiccup said eagerly. Those herbivorous dragons are very docile. As long as we don't harm them, they won't attack us. Moreover, their meat is tender and rich in nutrients, even more delicious than the sea fish and venison we usually eat. We can open up a pasture specifically to raise them. This will solve the tribe's food problem and also alleviate the pressure on the dragon horde, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. The surrounding Vikings' eyes lit up upon hearing this. If they could really raise these herbivorous dragons and solve the food problem, it would indeed be a good thing. And as long as the Dragon King was eliminated, the dragons wouldn't come to steal food anymore. That sounds like a good idea. Stoic nodded, his tone gradually softening. However, we still need time to verify it. But I am willing to believe you, and I am willing to give the dragons a chance, and ourselves a chance. Hearing Stoic's words, Lin and Hiccup both breathed a sigh of relief. They knew that it would still take time for the tribe to fully accept dragons, but at least they had taken the first step. By the way, Chief, Lin suddenly remembered something and asked, have you seen this monstrous nightmare before? Stoic shook his head, a hint of doubt in his voice. I've never seen such a monster. The waters around Burke Island have always been calm. Apart from dragons, such powerful monsters rarely appear. I think this might be related to the ley line energy underground on Burke Island, Lin mused. The sudden expansion of Burke Island earlier was due to a ley line energy burst. This energy is very powerful. It can not only make dragons grow and evolve quickly but also attract powerful monsters from the surrounding waters. The monstrous nightmare and herbivorous dragons appeared because of the ley line energy burst. Upon hearing this, Gabra immediately stepped forward and nodded heavily, saying to Stoic, Chief. Lin is right. I was just about to tell you about this. He patted his wooden prosthetic arm, a hint of annoyance in his tone. Before, I thought it was my training methods that had changed, or that the dragons themselves had become more irritable, but it wasn't until I heard Lin talk about ley line energy just now that I realized in these past few months, the dragons in the dragon training arena have indeed become increasingly difficult to deal with. The monstrous nightmare's flames are hotter, and other dragons have also shown mutations. I actually forgot to tell you about this. Ley line energy. Stoic frowned. What is that? Ley line energy is a natural energy, like sunlight and rain, that exists underground, Lin explained. Dragons can absorb this energy to grow and evolve. The reason Mira and I have our current strength is also because we absorbed ley line energy. However, this energy can also bring unknown dangers, such as monsters like the monstrous nightmare. So, other monsters might appear on Burke Island in the future. Stoic's expression became solemn. That possibility cannot be ruled out, and they might appear elsewhere, Lin nodded. Therefore, we must not only coexist with dragons to gain powerful assistance but also strengthen the tribe's defenses and investigate the source and impact of the ley line energy. Only then can we truly protect the safety of Burke Island. Stoic was silent for a moment, then nodded heavily. You are right. This matter will be handled by you and Hiccup. I will have the tribe members cooperate with you to clear land for raising herbivorous dragons and strengthen defenses. As for the investigation of the ley line energy, you need to find answers as soon as possible. Lin looked around. The remains of the battle were still scattered across the dragon training arena, injured villagers were being helped away by their companions, and Mira and Toothless were quietly eating beside the charred corpse of the monstrous nightmare. He nodded slightly and said in a steady voice, Chief, the details of coexistence, the plan for raising herbivorous dragons, and the investigation of the ley line energy all require more thorough discussion. It's getting dark now, and the dragon training arena still needs to be cleaned up, and the injured tribesmen need care. How about we first let everyone clean up the battlefield and deal with the immediate matters, then discuss it in detail at the Great Hall tonight. Stoic followed Lin's gaze to the chaotic dragon training arena and nodded, you've thought it through well. Let's do that. He then raised his voice and said to the surrounding Vikings, everyone listen. First, clear the debris from the dragon training arena, send the injured tribesmen for treatment, and gather at the Great Hall tonight. We have important matters to discuss. The Vikings responded in agreement and began to busy themselves in an orderly fashion. Some went to carry broken wooden fences, some helped injured companions, and others curiously gathered around Mira and Toothless, quietly discussing these two magical dragons. Just then, Mira and Toothless had finished eating the monstrous nightmare's corpse. They walked over to Lin and Hiccup, gently rubbed their arms, and let out soft growls from their throats. Myra's golden dragon eyes seemed even brighter than before, clearly indicating that after devouring the monstrous nightmare's dragon jade, its strength had increased again. As night deepened, the Great Hall on Burke Island was brightly lit. The torchlight illuminated faces that were curious, solemn, or filled with doubt. Vikings crowded everywhere in the hall, their hushed discussions rising and falling like boiling water, creating a noisy clamor. Amidst the discussions, Stoic leaned on his stone hammer and slowly walked onto the high platform in the center of the hall. His gaze swept majestically across the crowd, his heavy footsteps remarkably clear amidst the noise. When he reached the center of the platform, he forcefully struck the ground with his stone hammer. A muffled thud instantly silenced all discussions. Quiet, everyone. Stoic's voice was loud and powerful. I've gathered you here today for an important announcement. Hiccup has found the truth behind the dragons attacking us, and he's also found their nest. The hall instantly fell silent, and all eyes focused on Hiccup, who stood beside Stoic. Hiccup took a deep breath and once again detailed the location of the dragon's nest, the existence of the Dragon King, and the dragon's reluctant forced tribute of food. He didn't exaggerate, merely calmly stating what he had seen and heard. Occasionally, Astrid would step forward to add a detail or two, corroborating his words. After listening to Hiccup's account, the hall erupted again, the reaction even more intense than during the day. So that's how it is. It turns out the dragons weren't deliberately opposing us. An elderly Viking frowned, his tone full of surprise. But the Dragon King is so powerful, what if it's not satisfied with the tribute and brings the dragons to attack us? A Viking woman asked, her face full of worry. We have Lyn and that powerful black dragon. And Hiccup and Night Fury, they can defeat Monstrous Nightmare, so they can definitely deal with the Dragon King. A young warrior who had witnessed Myra's power earlier shouted, drawing many nods of agreement. That's true, but dragons are dragons after all. Who knows if they'll suddenly turn hostile? Some people remained vigilant. Various voices intertwined. Stoic didn't interrupt immediately. Only when the discussions gradually subsided did he look at Lyn, signaling him to speak. Lyn stepped forward, his gaze calmly sweeping across the hall, and said, I understand everyone's concerns, but fear won't solve the problem. The threat of the dragons certainly exists, and the Dragon King is our potential enemy, but we now have a way to deal with it. First, we can tame some dragons, making them our companions instead of enemies. Second, by raising herbivorous dragons, we can solve the food problem, which will not only ensure the tribe no longer lacks food but also, once we are strong enough, resolve the conflict at its root. He paused, then changed the subject, his eyes falling on Astrid, Fishlegs, Toughnut, and Roughnut in the crowd. Tomorrow, Hiccup and I will take you to the dragon training arena to demonstrate how to tame dragons. I have decided that Astrid, Fishlegs, Snotlout, and Roughnut, the 5 of you, will attempt to tame the ferocious dragons there tomorrow, not by defeating them with brute force, but by earning their trust and using skill to convince them. The 5 people whose names were called reacted differently. A glint of confident light flashed in Astrid's eyes. She slightly raised her chin and crossed her arms, clearly full of fighting spirit for dragon taming. For her, this was both a challenge and an opportunity to prove herself, and she absolutely couldn't lose to Hiccup and Lyn. Fishlegs, on the other hand, widened his eyes, his face full of surprise, and instinctively recoiled, mumbling, Me. I have to tame a dragon too. But I'm even a little scared just facing dragons. He usually enjoyed studying dragon lore but had never considered personally taming a living, ferocious dragon. Snotlout's face turned pale, and he instinctively swallowed, his eyes showing clear fear. He quietly tugged at Toughnut's sleeve beside him. Hey, are we really going? Those dragons can breathe fire and bite. Toughnut's eyes, however, lit up, his face full of excitement. He patted Snotlout's shoulder and whispered, What's there to be scared of? This is too cool. Think about it, if we can tame dragons, we'll be the most powerful dragon riders on Burke Island. Roughnut rolled her eyes, punched Toughnut's shoulder, and said in a sassy, slightly disdainful tone, You don't cry like a baby when a dragon chases you. But it does sound more interesting than guarding fishing boats every day. I'd like to try and see if those ferocious dragons are really that difficult to deal with. After speaking, she even gave Astrid a provocative look, clearly not wanting to lose to her. Lyn observed their reactions, a slight smile playing on his lips, and continued, Besides dragon taming, we have another important task, to clear a grassland in the back mountains, enclose it with wooden fences, and create a specialized herbivorous dragon farm. Once the fences are built, Hiccup and I will go deep into the forest to bring back those docile herbivorous dragons and raise them there. This way, the tribe's food supply will be secured. That's a good idea. Stoic immediately nodded in agreement. I'll have the able-bodied men in the tribe go to the back mountains first thing tomorrow morning to build the fences, ensuring it's completed as soon as possible. One more thing. Lyn's tone became serious. The monstrous nightmare that appeared today, and the eruption of ley line energy, both indicate that unknown dangers might still be hidden around Burke Island. Therefore, I propose that I, Hiccup, Astrid, Fishlegs, Toughnut, and Roughnut form an investigation team. He read out each name, his gaze lingering on each person for a moment. The mission of this team is to specifically investigate the source and impact of the ley line energy, the detailed situation of the dragon groups, and any other monsters that might appear. We will regularly report our findings to the chief and everyone, and formulate countermeasures. As for the chief and all you Vikings and warriors, Lin turned to Stoic, your mission is to continue protecting the safety of Burke Island, train the tribe's defensive forces, and handle daily affairs. We will divide the work, both resolving the immediate crisis and preparing for future safety. Stoic pondered for a moment, then exchanged a glance with Gobber, who nodded in agreement. He then looked at Lin and said firmly, I agree with your proposal. The investigation team will be formed as you've described, and all tribal resources will prioritize assisting you. First thing tomorrow morning, some people will go to the back mountains to build fences, and the others will follow you and Hiccup to the dragon training arena to see what dragon taming is all about. That's great. Hiccup said excitedly. He could feel that Burke Island was moving in a completely new direction, and he, Lin, and their friends were making history. Astrid raised an eyebrow and tilted her chin at Hiccup. I won't lose to you tomorrow. I'll definitely tame the most powerful dragon. We'll see about that. Hiccup responded with a smile, his eyes full of fighting spirit. Toughnut, pulling Fishlegs and Toughnut, began excitedly discussing what kind of dragons they would tame tomorrow. Roughnut occasionally interjected, either mocking their wild ideas or offering her own brilliant, dragon taming insights, making the scene lively and bustling. By the time the meeting ended, night had fallen. The sky over Burke Island was studded with stars, and the evening sea breeze, salty and damp, swept through the tribe, gradually dispersing the clamor of the day's battle. Lin took 2 large, sizzling pieces of roasted meat from the hall's grill. They were for Mira. After wrapping them in leaves, he walked toward his wooden house. Before he even reached the door, he heard a faint, scratching sound coming from inside the wooden house. As soon as Lin pushed the wooden door open, a black figure lunged at him. The massive head slammed directly into his arms, and a wet, warm tongue began licking his face frantically. Ha ha. Mira. Stop it. Lin was tickled senseless, nearly dropping the roasted meat in his hands. He quickly reached out to steady Mira's head. I know you missed me, but let go first, the meat is going to fall. Mira seemed to understand his words, obediently stepping back 2 paces. Her golden dragon eyes stared brightly at the roasted meat in his hand, her tail lightly sweeping the ground, and her throat emitted expectant, gurgling sounds. Lin smiled and shook his head, placing the leaf-wrapped meat on the ground. He squatted down and rubbed Mira's head. Sit properly, then you can eat. Mira immediately lay down obediently, placing her front paws together, looking like a large dog waiting to be fed. However, her body length, exceeding 5 meters, added a touch of contrasting cuteness to her docile appearance. Lin unwrapped the leaves and pushed the largest piece of roasted meat toward Mira. Mira let out an excited, "Awoo," lowered her head, and began to devour it. Her sharp teeth easily tore through the meat fibers, leaving her mouth glistening with oil. Watching Mira eat happily, Lin picked up his own piece of roasted meat. Just as he took a bite, Mira looked up and gently exhaled a puff of dragon breath toward the bonfire pit in the corner of the wooden house. A small cluster of sparks, glowing orange-red, landed precisely on the dry firewood. With a crackle, the bonfire instantly ignited, and warm light immediately filled the wooden house. Lin was stunned for a moment, then laughed. You're getting smarter. You even know how to help me light the fire. He put down his roasted meat, suddenly recalling the monstrous nightmare dragon jade Mira had swallowed earlier that day, and moved closer to her. Lin gently stroked Mira's scales and asked, Mira, you ate the monstrous nightmare's dragon jade today. Do you feel any different? Are you stronger, or can you do things you couldn't before? Mira stopped chewing, tilted her head, and watched Lin for 2 seconds, seemingly deep in thought. A moment later, she, awooed, twice at Lin, then slowly raised her right front paw. The paw was still stained with roasted meat grease, yet the air around it seemed to grow scorching hot the instant it was lifted. Following a soft boom, a cluster of orange-red flame suddenly erupted from her claw tip, steadily adhering to the paw. It neither burned her nor spread outward, looking like a layer of flowing flame armor. Lin's eyes instantly brightened. He subconsciously took half a step back, then immediately rushed forward, carefully examining Myra's flame claw. You can control flames to appear on your body. Previously, Myra's attacks were always dragon breath, never like this, with fire attached directly to her body parts. This was clearly a new ability gained after swallowing the dragon jade. Mira lightly waved her paw as if showing off. The flame flickered slightly with her movement but never went out. She, AWOO'd, twice more at Lin, her golden pupils filled with pride, as if saying, see. I'm amazing. That's an amazing surprise. Lin couldn't help but reach out, carefully touching the scales next to the flame. There was no scorching heat, only the inherent coolness of the scales. He hadn't expected that the monstrous nightmare's dragon jade could grant Mira new abilities. Now you can not only spray calamity fire, but also use flames attached to your body for defense. This gives us much more confidence when facing enemies. Mira seemed to understand his praise, excitedly standing up and circling Lin twice, her flame claw leaving a string of shallow scorch marks on the ground. Then, she gently shook her paw and withdrew the flame. The boy and the dragon quickly finished the roasted meat. Lin cleaned up the mess, glanced at the still bright starry sky outside the window, and said to Mira, let's go. Time for our daily cultivation. Mira immediately stood up and followed Lin to the open area in the center of the wooden house. Lin sat cross-legged, closed his eyes, and placed his hands on his knees. Mira lay opposite him, her golden dragon eyes slowly closing, a low, steady purring sound rumbling in her throat. The earth vein power began to converge around the wooden house. As time passed, Lin could clearly feel a warm energy coming from Myra's body, flowing along the connection between them and into his own body, coursing through his meridians like a stream. And the energy within his body was simultaneously being transmitted to Mira, forming a miraculous cycle. After an unknown amount of time, Lin suddenly felt the energy inside him change. The previously gentle energy now carried a hint of scorching heat, as if a small flame was dancing in his meridians. His heart stirred. He subconsciously guided this scorching energy flow to his right hand. When the energy gathered in his palm, he abruptly opened his eyes, only to see a ball of orange-red flame slowly rising from the center of his right palm. The flame was identical to Myra's previous flame, steadily adhering to his palm. There was no burning sensation, instead, it brought a sense of warm control. Lin stood up in shock, repeatedly examining his hand. What is going on? I can actually control flame attachment too. Mira also opened her eyes. Seeing the flame in Lin's palm, she excitedly, AWOO'd, twice, as if cheering for him. Lin's gaze suddenly fell upon the weapon rack in the corner. His usual iron sword rested there, its blade sharpened, its hilt wrapped in non-slip animal hide. A bold idea surged in his mind. He quickly walked over and took down the iron sword, then concentrated, guiding the flame energy from his palm toward the blade. The next second, a shocking scene unfolded. The orange-red flame slowly spread from his hand, instantly enveloping the entire iron sword. The fire flowed over the blade without damaging it, instead causing the originally cold iron sword to emit a blazing and dazzling light, transforming it into a true, flame sword. Lin gripped the fire-wrapped iron sword and swung his arm. The flames traced scorching arcs as the sword moved, and a faint, hissing, sound filled the air. He could clearly feel that the flame not only didn't affect his grip on the sword but seemed to significantly enhance its power. If he were to strike an enemy with this flame sword, he could probably inflict physical damage combined with a flame-scorching effect. This is incredible. Lin couldn't help but exclaim. He looked at Mira, his eyes full of delight. It seems the power of the dragon jade didn't just affect you. Through the dragon taming power, I've benefited too. As soon as he finished speaking, Lin could no longer contain his excitement. He thrust the iron sword back into the weapon rack and rushed toward Mira, wrapping his arms around her neck. Myra's scales were cool and smooth, but carried a hint of life's warmth. Lin pressed his face against her scales, vigorously stroking her neck, from the top of her head down to her spine, his movements quick and forceful, as if trying to convey all his joy through this intimate contact to Mira. Mira, you truly are my lucky star. Lin murmured into Myra's neck, his voice full of laughter. With you here, I feel like I can overcome any difficulty. Mira was comfortable being stroked, and she let out satisfied, purring sounds in her throat. Her massive head gently rubbed Lin's back, and her tail swept merrily across the ground, occasionally licking his face as if responding to his enthusiasm. The sun had just spread across Burke Island the next morning when the dragon training arena was already packed with a dense crowd. The Vikings, supporting the old and holding the young, were filled with curiosity and anticipation, their chatter rising and falling like tides. Some wondered if Lin's claim of dragon taming was true, others remained wary of dragons, and some young people were eager to witness the miracle firsthand. Did you hear? Lin is going to have Astrid and the others tame the vicious dragons themselves. How is that possible? Those dragons breathe fire and bite. Lin defeated such a terrifying monster yesterday, maybe he really does have a way to make the dragons obey. Stoik and Gobber stood at the front of the spectator stands, their expressions solemn yet tinged with anticipation. Stoik gripped his stone hammer tightly, his gaze fixed on the young people in the center of the arena, his heart filled with mixed emotions. He had never imagined that the relationship between Burke Island and dragons would reach a turning point in this way. In the center of the dragon training arena, Lin and Hiccup stood side by side. Lin was tall and straight, his brow slightly furrowed, yet his eyes were exceptionally firm, the noisy crowd reflected in his deep gaze. His palms were slightly sweaty, not from nervousness, but from a heavy sense of responsibility. Today was not just an attempt to let his companions tame dragons, but a crucial battle to prove coexistence between humans and dragons to the entire tribe. Opposite them, Astrid, Fishlegs, Toughnut, Roughnut, and Toughnut were lined up, each with a different expression. Astrid crossed her arms, her eyes sharp, exuding confidence that she would succeed. Fishlegs nervously clutched the corner of his clothing, his body trembling slightly, and he was softly reciting dragon habits under his breath, seemingly trying to psych himself up. Toughnut's face was pale, his feet involuntarily shuffled back half a step, but he quickly pulled them back and deliberately straightened his back. Toughnut, meanwhile, excitedly looked around, occasionally slapping Roughnut on the shoulder and whispering encouragement, "Don't be scared. Once we tame a dragon, we'll become the tribe's dragon riders." Roughnut rolled her eyes, slapped Toughnut's hand away, and retorted sharply, "Stop stirring up trouble. Just make sure you don't end up crying when the dragon chases you." Lin raised his hand to signal for silence, and the noisy dragon training arena instantly fell quiet. His gaze swept over the 5 people in front of him, and he said in a steady tone, "Today, we are not trying to defeat these dragons, but to build trust with them. Dragons, like humans, have emotions. As long as we drop our hostility and treat them with sincerity, they will not harm us." Hiccup followed up, "Toothless and I are the best examples. I was afraid of him at first, but after spending time together, I realized he is actually very gentle and loyal. Next, we will release the dragons in the dragon training arena. Lin and I will guide them first, and then you will try to touch them and build trust." After speaking, Lin and Hiccup exchanged glances and walked toward the iron cages on opposite sides of the dragon training arena. Lin walked up to the iron cage holding the monstrous nightmare. This was the same dragon he had subdued during the assessment yesterday. It was now pacing anxiously inside the cage, emitting low growls from its throat. Lin stretched out his hand and gently placed it on the cage. The dragon taming power within him flowed slowly, transmitting a gentle aura. The monstrous nightmare seemed to sense something, slowly stopped pacing, and the hostility in its eyes when staring at Lin lessened. "Don't be afraid, I won't hurt you," Lin whispered, then nodded to the Viking warrior beside him, "Open the dragon prison." The door of the dragon prison slowly opened. The monstrous nightmare hesitated for a moment, but eventually walked out slowly. Its entire body was covered in dark red scales, its wings slightly spread, and it occasionally let out a low whimper from its throat, yet it did not actively attack anyone. Lin slowly walked forward, reached out, and gently stroked the top of its head. The monstrous nightmare's body stiffened slightly, then relaxed, its previously tense muscles gradually easing. On the other side, Hiccup also successfully released the deadly natter, the Gronkel, the terrible deadly natter, and the spine dragon from their cages. These dragons were normally exceptionally fierce, but under the guidance of Hiccup and Lin, they had all become much gentler, showing no aggression whatsoever. "Alright, let's begin now." Lin led the monstrous nightmare over to Snotlout. The monstrous nightmare was enormous and carried a scorching aura when it approached. Snotlout stumbled back repeatedly in fear, his legs weak, nearly falling to the ground. Don't come closer. His voice trembled, and his eyes were full of terror. Don't be afraid, it won't hurt you. Lin's tone was gentle as he reached out and steadied Snotlout's shoulder. See, it's very docile now. He took Snotlout's hand and slowly guided it toward the monstrous nightmare's nose. Let it smell your scent and build trust. Snotlout trembled all over, closing his eyes and daring not to look, his palms slick with cold sweat. The monstrous nightmare lowered its head and gently sniffed his palm with its wet nose, the warm breath tickling his hand. Snotlout subconsciously opened his eyes, meeting the gaze of the monstrous nightmare. The dragon that had previously been full of hostility now looked gentle, without a trace of malice. Lin slowly guided Snotlout's palm to gently rest on the monstrous nightmare's head. The moment his skin touched the scales, Snotlout shuddered. The fear on his face gradually receded, replaced by disbelief. He could clearly feel the temperature beneath the monstrous nightmare's skin and its steady breathing. This is real. He murmured, taking a few deep breaths as his nervousness subsided. It really isn't biting me. Lin smiled and nodded. See, it has accepted you. The monstrous nightmare gently rubbed Snotlout's palm, letting out a gentle growl from its throat, as if responding to his trust. A look of delighted surprise spread across Snotlout's face. His initial fear had vanished, and he even dared to gently stroke the monstrous nightmare's scales, his eyes filled with excitement. Our turn. Hiccup guided the deadly natter over to Astrid. The deadly natter was entirely blue, with sharp spines on its tail, extremely fast, and its fire was intensely hot, making it a famously fierce dragon species in the tribe. A flash of excitement appeared in Astrid's eyes. Without hesitation, she extended her hand and placed it in front of the deadly natter's nose under Hiccup's guidance. The deadly natter sniffed her scent, then lowered its head. Astrid's palm gently rested on its head, and a confident smile appeared on her face. The deadly natter gently rubbed her hand docilely, seeming to sense Astrid's goodwill. Astrid looked up and gave Hiccup a challenging glance. It seems taming dragons isn't so difficult after all. Hiccup smiled and shook his head, then led the Gronkle over to Fishlegs. The Gronkle was bulky, covered in thick scales, and specialized in charging and spitting lava. Fishlegs was so nervous his face turned pale, but encouraged by Hiccup, he tremblingly extended his hand. When his palm touched the Gronkle's head, the Gronkle let out a low whimper and docilely lay down on the ground. Fishlegs' eyes widened, his face filled with surprise. It really listened. I actually tamed a Gronkle. Next, Hiccup brought the terrible deadly natter over to Toughnut and Roughnut. This dragon had two heads, a volatile temperament, and was usually difficult to control. Toughnut excitedly rubbed his hands together and was the first to reach out. Although Roughnut scoffed, she also curiously moved closer. The terrible deadly natter's two heads sniffed their scents separately, then gently rubbed against their hands. Toughnut burst out laughing, this is so cool. We actually tamed a deadly natter. Roughnut also showed a barely noticeable smile at the corner of her mouth, her eyes full of pleasant surprise. The Vikings in the entire arena were stunned. The previous chatter vanished without a trace, and everyone's face was filled with shock and disbelief. They had never imagined that the vicious dragons they once feared so much could be tamed so docilely by humans. The Vikings in the entire arena were stunned. The previously noisy chatter instantly vanished without a trace, and everyone's face was filled with shock and disbelief. Those vicious dragons they once feared and fled from were now affectionately interacting with the young people like gentle pets, a sight they couldn't have even dreamed of. Just then, Stoik suddenly strode into the center of the dragon training arena and slammed his stone hammer heavily onto the ground. The loud thud instantly drew everyone's attention. He scanned the Vikings present, his voice loud and solemn. Brave Vikings! Today, we have witnessed the miracle of peaceful coexistence between humans and dragons. But we are all aware that the threat of the Dragon King remains. It controls the dragon hordes and could attack Burke Island at any moment. The crowd instantly quieted down. The initial joy was gradually replaced by solemnity, and a touch of seriousness appeared on everyone's faces. Stoik continued, starting today, the tribe will begin building warships. We must build the sturdiest warships and prepare to launch an expedition against the Dragon King. At the same time, I announce the formation of the Dragon Taming Investigation Squad, with Lin serving as captain, Hiccup as vice captain, and Astrid, Fishlegs, Toughnut, and Roughnut as core members. They will also be responsible for investigating the Dragon King's lair and preparing for the subsequent campaign. As soon as he finished speaking, the dragon training arena instantly erupted in earth-shattering cheers. Great! Support the chieftain. Expedition against the Dragon King. Protect Burke Island. The shouts rose and fell, and even Astrid and the others excitedly high-fived each other, their eyes full of fighting spirit. Before the cheers stopped, a group of young Vikings swarmed forward, surrounding Lin and Hiccup, asking questions all at once. Captain Lin. When can we learn to tame dragons? I want to become a dragon rider too. Hiccup. I've always wanted to fly on a dragon since I was little, can you teach me? When can we tame dragons again? I want one too. The crowd grew denser. Lin and Hiccup didn't know who to answer first, finding the situation both annoying and amusing. Seeing this, Stoik quickly stepped forward, placing his hands in front of the two, and said with a smile, all right, everyone disperse. Taming dragons and becoming dragon riders both take time, and the tribe doesn't have many extra dragons. We will notify everyone when the time comes. Only then did the Vikings reluctantly step back, still muttering things like, make it quick. And, we'll be waiting, before slowly dispersing. Lin and Hiccup exchanged a look of relief. Just as they were about to speak to Stoik, they heard a familiar dragon roar from the sky. They looked up and saw Mira flying in from the distance. Mira spread her wings and flew fast and steadily. Upon closer inspection, Mira was now about the same size as Toothless. Toothless came running and hopping from the village center, looking much sturdier after eating monstrous nightmare meat. Mira was roaring at Lin as she flew. When she got closer, Lin suddenly frowned. He clearly saw that Mira was carefully clutching a small, half-human-sized dragon in her talons. The small dragon was gray-white all over, with a red head and a pair of horns forming a triangle. Its body was tiny, and it was currently nestled obediently in Mira's talons, its black, grape-like eyes curiously examining the dragon training arena below. Lin was filled with confusion. Where had Mira gone? And where did this little dragon come from? Mira flapped her increasingly strong wings, generating a refreshing breeze, and landed steadily in the center of the dragon training arena. She carefully bent her front claws and gently placed the hatchling she held onto the grass, afraid that too much force would injure the half-grown little fellow. As soon as the hatchling landed, it stumbled and swayed. Its black, grape-like eyes darted around, first curiously examining Lin and the others who had gathered, then lowering its head to rub its own grayish-white scales, looking utterly endearing. Its entire body of grayish-white skin glowed delicately. Its red head, combined with a pair of slightly curved horns, formed a neat little triangle. It also had a horn between its nostrils, and sharp spikes ran from the top of its head to the tip of its tail. Its small tail was as flexible as a little snake, swaying with the characteristic curiosity of a young dragon. Mira, where did you bring this hatchling back from? Lin was the first to squat down, his gaze switching between Mira and the hatchling, his tone filled with confusion. Hiccup, Astrid, and the others immediately gathered around, discussing excitedly, this dragon looks so unique, I've never seen it before. Look at its head, it's actually triangular. Fishlegs, unable to contain his curiosity, pulled out his dragon observation manual and a charcoal pencil from his backpack, squatting near the hatchling to observe it carefully. He started by recording the texture of the hatchling's scales and the shape of its horns, then noticed the membranous texture of its wings, and even cautiously offered it a piece of dried meat. The hatchling hesitated, extended its tiny tongue to lick it, and then started chewing in small bites, looking extremely docile. I know what it is. This is a hatchling of the hurricane whirlwind dragon. Fishlegs held the manual high, his voice filled with uncontrollable excitement. Look at its fine yet tough scales all over its body, the characteristic 3 horns, the orange membrane wings with yellow tips that support flight, the orange body and tail, and the spikes from head to tail tip. These are all typical characteristics of the hurricane whirlwind dragon. But, he changed his tone, pointing at the hatchling's red head, his voice growing even more excited. The heads of ordinary hurricane whirlwind dragons are grayish-white. This one's red head is extremely rare. It's not recorded in the book, I'm actually seeing this mutated hurricane whirlwind dragon with my own eyes. Everyone gasped repeatedly. Astrid couldn't help but reach out to touch the hatchling's red head, but afraid of startling it, she kept her hand hovering gently in midair, so the normal ones have grayish-white heads. This red is too special, like a small burning fireball. Hiccup also squatted down, staring at the hatchling's head and marveling, no wonder it looked so different. It's a rare mutation, how lucky. Everyone nodded repeatedly, but Lin turned to look at Mira, his tone serious. Mira, where exactly did you find it? Mira let out two AWOO cries at Lin, her golden dragon eyes filled with earnestness. Miraculously, as Lin stared into Mira's eyes, he clearly read her meaning. It turned out that when Mira went to play on the back mountain early in the morning, she suddenly heard the frightened roars of a herbivorous dragon. Running over, she saw the hatchling baring its teeth at the herbivorous dragon, seemingly trying to scare it, but not actually attacking. Mira found it interesting and lonely, so she carefully picked it up. Unexpectedly, when she passed the village, Toothless smelled its scent and flew over as well. I know what Mira meant. Lin turned around and told everyone about Mira's experience. As soon as he finished speaking, Astrid's eyes widened in surprise. Mira can express so much. And you understood all of it. It's the special connection between Mira and me. Lin explained with a smile. Ever since we established our bond, I can perceive her emotions and simple thoughts through our mental link. Everyone showed expressions of astonishment. Hiccup couldn't help but tease. It seems your synergy is deeper than mine and Toothless's. So what do we do now? We can't just abandon the little guy, can we? Snotlout scratched his head, but his eyes couldn't help but glance at the hatchling. He clearly found the little dragon adorable too. Just as Lin was about to speak, he felt something gently brush against his trouser leg. He looked down and saw the hatchling wiggling its tiny body, climbing up his leg. Its small claws gripped the fabric, its movements clumsy yet persistent. The hatchling landed steadily on his shoulder and gently rubbed its small red head against Lin's cheek. The warm breath tickled his skin, it looked extremely affectionate. This scene was immediately noticed by Mira. She instantly narrowed her golden dragon eyes, radiating a faint pressure. Her previously docile aura instantly turned sharp. She let out a low, AWOO, at the hatchling, her tone full of warning, and her tail gently swept the ground, as if asserting dominance. Frightened by the pressure, the hatchling instantly stiffened, immediately jumped off Lin's shoulder, and scrambled behind Lin's legs. Its tiny body pressed tightly against him, trembling, its black, grape-like eyes filled with grievance. It also secretly poked its small head out, timidly glancing at Mira. Don't be angry, don't be angry. Lin quickly reached out with his other hand, soothing both of them simultaneously. One hand gently stroked Mira's head and smoothed down her back, his tone gentle. It's just curious and finds me friendly, it meant nothing else. You are irreplaceable. As he spoke, he gently touched Mira's forehead with his own, conveying a sense of calm. Mira rubbed Lin's palm, sensed his pure reassurance, and gradually retracted her pressure. However, she still watched the hatchling warily, her head slightly lowered, much like a child guarding its food, afraid that this sudden newcomer would steal Lin's attention. Lin then looked down at the hatchling behind him, squatted down, reached out, and gently touched its small head with the back of his finger, his tone gentle. Don't be afraid, she meant no harm, she's just a little jealous. The hatchling sensed his goodwill, hesitated, and then licked his fingertip with its small tongue, looking even more obedient. Seeing the two dragons, one possessive, one aggrieved, Lin had an idea. This typhoon whirlwind dragon is still small, surviving alone is too dangerous. How about we each take turns caring for it for a day? This way, we can observe its habits and allow everyone to spend more time with dragons and become familiar with different species characteristics. Great. I agree. Toughnut was the first to raise his hand, rubbing them together excitedly. But who gets to raise it first? I want to take it to the back mountain tomorrow. Why do you get to go first? I want to take it fishing. Astrid immediately retorted, her eyes filled with indignation. Fishlegs also whispered. I want to record its dietary habits first, that's very important for research. Everyone instantly started arguing, talking over each other, all wanting to be the first to look after the hatchling. Lin watched the lively scene and suggested with a smile, "Stop arguing. Let's decide with rock paper scissors. One round determines the winner. Whoever wins gets to care for it first, how about that?" This suggestion was immediately accepted by everyone. The 6 people formed a circle and extended their hands. Scissors, rock, paper. Following a synchronized shout, everyone simultaneously revealed their hand signs. Toughnut threw scissors, Toughnut and Roughnut threw rock, Astrid threw paper, Fishlegs also threw scissors, and only Hiccup threw rock. "Wow! I won!" Hiccup raised his hand in surprise, and Toothless excitedly circled him, letting out cheerful growls. Although everyone was a little disappointed, they were good sports. Toughnut patted Hiccup's shoulder. "Fine, consider yourself lucky this time. Make sure you take good care of the little guy tomorrow." The cheers of the crowd rose and fell, and the hatchling, infected by the joy, also cried out happily. It suddenly flapped its thin wings and clumsily took flight. Even more surprisingly, as it flew, it suddenly spat out a small cluster of orange-red flames. Immediately afterward, its body began to spin, and the flames scattered with its movement, turning into sparks, much like a spinning firework. It flew a circle around the dragon training arena, then landed steadily in the center of the field and continued to spin rapidly. When it finally stopped, a clear, spiral-shaped burn mark was left on the ground, the pattern so intricate it looked like a deliberately drawn design. Lin squatted down, his fingertips gently tracing the edge of the mark, feeling the residual heat, a gentle smile appearing on his face. His voice was full of laughter. "Look at this mark, doesn't it look like a tiny whirlwind? How about we call it, Whirlwind? It suits its appearance and commemorates the first time it showed us this ability." Early the next morning, as the sun on Burke Island just crested the ridge, golden light, like melted honey, slowly spilled onto the wooden ground of the dragon training arena. Lin's team had gathered in the center of the arena, where the spiral scorch marks left by the whirlwind last night were still clearly visible on the ground. The edges of the marks were faintly charred. Mira was licking her dragon's snout with the tip of her tongue. Its black scales reflected a warm luster in the sunlight. It occasionally looked up at Lin, letting out low. Astrid leaned against Stormfly's blue wings, toying with a newly sharpened dagger in her hand. The dagger flew through the air and landed back in her grip. She occasionally ran her fingertips along the blade, but her gaze unconsciously drifted towards the entrance of the dragon training arena, clearly anticipating the appearance of Little Whirlwind. Fishlegs squatted on the ground, his slightly worn dragon observation manual spread open on his knees. He was rapidly jotting something down with a charcoal pencil, the tip scratching across the paper with a. Toughnut and Roughnut were standing aside, arguing incessantly, their voices growing louder and drawing frequent glances from those around them. Roughnut, however, rolled her eyes and slapped the bag of jerky out of his hand, retorting. Even Toughnut, who usually loved to sleep in, had gotten up early. He held a fresh salmon, raising an eyebrow and saying. Just then, Toothless's weak dragon roar came from a distance. The sound was hoarse, as if rubbed with sandpaper, completely different from its usual clear and cheerful calls. Everyone looked up at the sound and couldn't help but burst into laughter. Even the usually serious Lin's lips curved slightly upwards. Hiccup, riding Toothless, slowly flew over from afar, looking as if all his strength had been drained, his head nodding as if he would fall asleep any second. The dark circles under his eyes were almost drooping to his cheeks, as if someone had painted ink around them. His usually neat brown hair was a mess, like a bird's nest caught in a gale, with a few strands clinging to his forehead, stained with a bit of unknown light brown fuzz. His leather armor jacket was also wrinkled, its collar askew, revealing a slightly worn linen shirt underneath. The cuff was stained with a dark brown mark. That was from when Whirlwind knocked over the berry jam last night. He had worked for half an hour to barely wipe it clean, but it still left a noticeable trace. Toothless was in an even worse state than Hiccup. Its signature large wings drooped weakly, flapping with increasingly smaller amplitude during flight. The scales on the edges of its wings had lost their usual luster, appearing dull and gray, as if covered in a layer of dust. Its neck hung limply, its long head almost touching the ground, and even its usually wagging little tail hung motionless. Only low whimpering sounds occasionally escaped its throat, like a small cat that had been wronged but dared not resist. The most comical sight was Toothless's left ear, Little Whirlwind was tightly gripping the ear tip with its tiny but strong claws, its entire body hanging there like a fluffy gray-white little charm. Its entirely gray-white scales shimmered delicately in the sunlight, its small red head occasionally swayed, rubbing Toothless's ear with its damp nose, and letting out joyful. Every time Toothless flapped its wings, it swayed along, like it was on a swing, excitedly fluttering its thin, cicada wing-like wings a few times, its small tail wagging flexibly from side to side, completely oblivious to its. Hiccup slid off Toothless's back, stumbling as his feet hit the ground. He swayed, but luckily Lin was quick and stepped forward to steady his arm. He rubbed his sore shoulders and then stretched with a big yawn, his bones making. He wore a look of utter despair, sighing and saying. He walked over and sat on a flat stone. The stone's temperature still carried the coolness of the morning, which made him feel a little more awake. He began to ramble about his. My toolbox, which I left on the table, was pounced on and scattered everywhere, wrenches and hammers all over the floor. It even carried the wrench I used to repair dragon saddles under the bed. You wouldn't believe how long I searched. I was on the floor for half an hour before I found that wrench. Everyone burst into laughter, Astrid laughing so hard the tears almost came to her eyes. She clutched her stomach and said. Fishlegs immediately lowered his head and quickly jotted notes in his manual, his charcoal pencil moving swiftly across the paper. Whirlwind curled up comfortably on his lap, rubbing its small head against his hand and letting out. But as soon as Hiccup thought of last night's experience, he couldn't help but frown. One moment it knocked over my water cup, spilling water all over the bed, forcing me to get up in the middle of the night to change the sheets. The next, it landed on my pillow and stepped on my hair with its tiny claws. Though small, those claws hurt quite a bit, making me yell. He paused, then pointed to Toothless's left ear tip. Indeed, there was a small, whitish mark there, looking as if something had bitten it. Toothless seemed to understand Hiccup's words, rubbing against Hiccup's hand plaintively, its whimpering growing louder, its green eyes filled with a pitiful expression. Whirlwind also seemed to notice Toothless's distress. It climbed down from Hiccup's lap and slowly walked to Toothless's paw, gently rubbing its paw with its small red head and even extending its tiny tongue to lick Toothless's ear tip, letting out. Seeing this, Snotlout quickly handed over the salmon he was holding, scratched his head, and said with a simple smile, Hiccup, don't be mad. Try feeding it some salmon. Maybe it will behave better today after eating. Whirlwind smelled the salmon, immediately approached, sniffed it with its nose, and then began chewing heartily, wagging its tail even faster. Just then, two villagers responsible for building the herbivorous dragon enclosure hurried over. Their clothes were covered in wood shavings and dirt, and their trouser legs were torn by roadside thorns, yet their faces were full of excitement, and they didn't even bother to wipe the sweat from their brows. The leading villager was named Thor, a famous carpenter on Burke Island. His craftsmanship was among the best in the tribe, and he had previously led the construction of many wooden buildings in the settlement. He ran up to Lin, panting heavily, and shouted, Captain Lin. The herbivorous dragon enclosure and shed are finished. We used the sturdiest oak wood, just as you instructed, trunks so thick it takes 2 adult Vikings to circle them, and we buried the bottom half a meter deep, filling the gaps between the stakes with dirt. The shed is also built, with a thick layer of hay on the roof to shelter them from wind and rain. We've placed several wooden troughs inside for easy feeding and watering of the herbivorous dragons. Do you want to go to the back mountain to see it now? That's great. Lin's eyes lit up. He immediately stood up and brushed the dust off his clothes. His slight look of worry instantly vanished, replaced by excitement. We were worried yesterday about whether we could successfully settle the herbivorous dragons today, but I didn't expect you to finish so quickly. Since we are settling the herbivorous dragons today, let's all go to the back mountain to take a look, and while we're there, herd the herbivorous dragons scattered in the forest into the enclosure. They will have a permanent home now, which will make it easier for us to care for them uniformly. Everyone nodded in agreement. Astrid was the first to blow a loud whistle, which sounded exceptionally clear in the morning air. A crisp dragon roar immediately echoed from the sky in the distance. Stormfly quickly dove down from the clouds, generating a refreshing breeze as she flapped her wings, landing steadily in front of Astrid. Astrid skillfully flipped onto its back, gripping the reins tightly, and smiled as she said to Stormfly, Stormfly, you'll have to work hard today. We're going to the back mountain to settle the herbivorous dragons. You need to be good and not scare them. Stormfly seemed to understand, letting out a cheerful dragon roar and gently flapping its wings once. Fishlegs also called out, "Meatball," toward the forest. A massive gronkel slowly walked over. It was entirely coffee-colored, and its skin looked exceptionally sturdy, as if covered by a thick layer of rock. Meatball walked up to Fishlegs and obediently lowered its head, making it easy for Fishlegs to climb onto its back. After Fishlegs was seated, he took a handful of small stones from his pocket, gently fed them to Meatball, and whispered, "Meatball, we're going to the back mountain today. Let's go." Panchi let out a low, "awoo" sound after eating the stones, as if responding to his words. Toughnut and Roughnut walked together toward the deadly natter nearby. The heads of that terrifying deadly natter were named Baff and Belch, respectively. Toughnut awkwardly climbed onto the dragon's back first, then reached out and pulled Roughnut up, helping her sit securely. Once they were both seated, Baff and Belch simultaneously let out a loud roar, seeming to express excitement, and began gently flapping their wings, ready for takeoff. Hiccup forced himself to stay alert and carefully placed Whirlwind on Toothless's back, then climbed up himself. Although Toothless was still tired, he managed to flap his wings once, as if indicating he was fine. Lin was the last to mount Mira. He gently patted Myra's neck and said softly, "Mira, let's go. We're heading to the back mountain to see the newly built enclosure." Mira let out a low, "awoo" sound, spread her wings, and slowly lifted Lin into the air. The group, riding their dragons, flew majestically toward the back mountain, the sunlight glinting off the dragon's scales. Looking down from the air, the scenery of Burke Island was fully visible, stretches of green forest, winding rivers, and the scattered wooden houses of the tribe. Everything appeared so peaceful and beautiful. On the clearing in the back mountain, a sturdy wooden enclosure had been completed. The fence was about 3 meters high, every oak post meticulously polished to a smooth finish without splinters, and the posts were firmly secured with thick hemp ropes, making it look exceptionally solid. The stones at the base of the enclosure were neatly arranged, the gaps filled with dirt, making it extremely firm when stepped upon, eliminating any worry that the herbivorous dragons might escape. The wooden shed next to the enclosure was spacious and bright. The roof was covered with thick hay, which was secured with ropes and then covered with clay to prevent it from being blown away by the wind. Inside the shed were 3 wooden troughs. They were clean and tidy, evidently having just been washed, and nearby was a pile of fresh green grass, the food prepared for the herbivorous dragons. "This is really well done." Lin dismounted Mira, walked to the edge of the enclosure, and knocked hard on the oak wood, producing a dull, thud sound, which proved the oak's extremely hard texture. He nodded in satisfaction and said to Thor, "Thor, you did a great job. This enclosure looks very sturdy. The herbivorous dragons definitely won't be able to break it or jump out. Thank you for your hard work. Once the herbivorous dragons are settled, I will speak to the chief to credit you with an achievement." Thor smiled and waved his hand, saying, "Captain Lin, you're being too polite. This is what we should do. We're happy to contribute to the tribe. Also, we laid a thick layer of hay inside the enclosure so the herbivorous dragons can sleep comfortably instead of lying directly on the cold ground. We also left ventilation gaps in the shed windows, which provide shelter from wind and rain while ensuring air circulation so the herbivorous dragons won't feel stuffy." Lin nodded, then turned to the group and said, "Everyone, move gently. Herbivorous dragons don't attack proactively, but they are easily startled. Once startled, they will run wild, and it will be difficult to herd them into the enclosure. Mira, you go say hello to the herbivorous dragons first, let them get familiar with our scent so they won't be afraid." Mira obediently walked forward and gave a gentle, "awoo" toward the 3 herbivorous dragons grazing near the edge of the forest. Those herbivorous dragons were entirely gray, massive in size, with a pair of short horns on their heads and a club at the end of their tails, looking honest and docile. Hearing Mira's sound, they all raised their heads and looked at Mira curiously. Instead of running away, they slowly approached Mira by a few steps, clearly sensing Mira's goodwill and knowing she would not harm them. Lin took the opportunity to pull out the fresh green grass he had prepared from his backpack. This grass he had specifically picked from the back mountain that morning. The leaves were tender and carried a faint fragrance. He walked up to the leading herbivorous dragon. That herbivorous dragon was slightly larger than the others, and its horns were thicker. It was clearly the leader of this group. Lin gently offered the grass to its mouth and softly said, "Don't be afraid, we won't hurt you. This is food for you. Eat." The herbivorous dragon hesitated, gently sniffed the grass with its nose, and then cautiously extended its long tongue, wrapped it around the grass, and slowly began chewing. Seeing their leader eat the grass, the other herbivorous dragons also gathered around, rubbing their noses against Lin's hand as if begging for food. Lin smiled and distributed the grass to them. Astrid, Hiccup, and the others also took out the food they had prepared and fed the herbivorous dragons, quickly becoming familiar with them. Guided by Lin and the others, the herbivorous dragons obediently followed them toward the enclosure. As they walked, they occasionally lowered their heads to take a bite of the roadside grass, and sometimes they would stop to curiously sniff Mira or Stormfly, appearing very docile. Before long, all three herbivorous dragons had entered the enclosure. They spread out inside, some lay on the hay to rest, closing their eyes to enjoy the sunlight. Others lowered their heads to eat the grass in the troughs with great relish. And still others rubbed against the shed posts, as if familiarizing themselves with the new environment. The whole scene was warm and harmonious. Fishlegs was busy distributing grass to the herbivorous dragons. He carefully placed the grass into the troughs and occasionally observed the dragons' feeding habits, recording in his manual, herbivorous dragons prefer fresh, tender grass. They are relatively quiet while eating, with no signs of fighting. Astrid checked the troughs and hay in the shed, ensuring the herbivorous dragons' living environment was clean and comfortable. She also specifically tidied up the scattered hay on the ground and laid it out where the herbivorous dragons were resting. Just then, Hiccup, riding Toothless, hurried back from the forest. His face held a hint of excitement, and even the dark circles under his eyes seemed lighter. He had clearly discovered something interesting. As soon as he landed, he eagerly ran to Lin, speaking quickly, "Lin, I found something strange. Just now, I took Whirlwind for a spin in the forest, wanting it to get familiar with the environment of the back mountain. We ended up seeing an open space deep in the forest. There was a huge spiral pattern made of flowers and plants on the clearing. That pattern was incredibly neat, with tidy edges, definitely not something that grew naturally. I thought it was very strange, so I hurried back to tell you." Lin's heart stirred. He immediately recalled the spiral burn mark Whirlwind left in the dragon training arena last night. Both were spiral-shaped. Could there be some connection? He quickly said, "Let's go, we'll check it out. Maybe this pattern is related to Whirlwind. It would be troublesome if it got destroyed if we went too late." Everyone stopped what they were doing, mounted their respective dragons, and followed Hiccup deep into the forest. Toothless carried Whirlwind behind them. Whirlwind lay on Toothless's back, curiously looking around, occasionally letting out AWOO cries, seemingly full of interest in the surrounding environment. After flying for about a quarter of an hour, everyone arrived at the clearing Hiccup had mentioned. This clearing was located deep in the forest, surrounded by tall oak trees. Sunlight filtered through the gaps in the leaves, casting dappled shadows on the ground, and the air was filled with the fragrant scent of flowers and plants. There were no weeds in the clearing, only a layer of vibrant flowers and plants. These flowers and plants varied in color, with red wild roses, yellow dandelions, purple forget-me-nots, and white daisies. They were meticulously arranged into a spiral pattern with a diameter of over 10 meters, spreading outwards in circles from the center to the edge. The lines were so clear it looked as if they had been measured with a ruler, and every flower was perfectly placed, appearing exceptionally beautiful. Who made this? It's too amazing. Astrid squatted down, carefully touching a petal of a wild rose. The petals were soft and smooth, clearly freshly picked. She gently parted the roots of the flowers and plants, exclaiming in surprise, "There's no damage to the roots, and the soil is very moist, as if they were carefully transplanted from somewhere else and then neatly arranged in a spiral shape. Besides us, who else on Burke Island would do something like this?" Fishlegs also squatted on the ground, gently touching the soil with his finger, then smelling it, and said thoughtfully, "There's a faint scent of dragon breath in the soil. Although it's very faint, I can smell it. This should be the aura of some kind of dragon. Could this pattern have been made by a dragon? But how could a dragon have such strong patience to arrange flowers and plants into a spiral shape?" Lin didn't speak. He stared intently at the spiral pattern, his mind constantly recalling the burn mark Whirlwind had left last night. The spiral direction and line density of both were astonishingly similar, as if carved from the same template, only differing in size. A guess gradually formed in his mind, but it required further confirmation. Just then, Whirlwind on Hiccup's shoulder suddenly twisted its body and jumped down. It flapped its cicada-wing thin wings, slowly flying to the center of the clearing. It curiously looked at the spiral pattern on the ground, then suddenly opened its small mouth and spat out a small cluster of orange-red flames. The flames, though not large, were very hot, leaving a small charred mark on the ground. Immediately after, its body began to spin rapidly, its wings flapping faster and faster. The orange-red flames spread out with its rotation, leaving a shallow spiral mark on the ground. When it stopped spinning, everyone was surprised to find that the newly appeared spiral mark on the ground perfectly matched the huge spiral pattern made of flowers and plants. Both the spiral direction and the line details were identical, as if it had been deliberately traced from the pattern. So Whirlwind's mark is the same as this pattern. Fishlegs exclaimed in surprise, his manual falling to the ground with a thud. His eyes wide, he said with disbelief, this means this huge spiral pattern was likely also made by a hurricane whirlwind dragon. And judging by the size of this pattern, the one who made it must have been an adult hurricane whirlwind dragon. No sooner had he spoken than a deafening dragon roar suddenly came from the sky. The sound was several times louder than Myra's cry, shaking the surrounding trees slightly, causing leaves to fall like a leaf rain. Everyone looked up in horror to see a gigantic dragon rapidly flying from the clouds. Its speed was extremely fast, and as its wings flapped, they created a powerful gust of air, even blowing the flowers and plants on the ground to one side. A faint scent of dragon breath permeated the air. This dragon had a wingspan of 70 meters, even larger than Mira and Toothless combined. Its wings were entirely red, and its body was covered in white scales that gleamed with a metallic cold light in the sun, like a layer of sturdy armor. Each scale was neatly arranged, making it look exceptionally majestic. Its red head bore a pair of curved giant horns, faintly textured, with tips sharp enough to pierce rock. Its eyes were red, like two enormous gems, its gaze sharp enough to penetrate the air, fixed intently on the people and Whirlwind on the ground. Its body was strong and powerful, with sharp claws on its hind limbs that gleamed coldly. Its tail was long, with a small spike from head to tip. Its appearance was 7/10 similar to Whirlwind, but its body was more than 10 times larger, making it appear exceptionally majestic. It's an adult hurricane whirlwind dragon. Fishlegs cried out, picking up his fallen manual and quickly flipping to a page, pointing at the text, look. The book says that adult typhoon whirlwind dragons will spin and breathe dragon breath to trap their prey when hunting, which is why they're also called hurricane whirlwind dragons. They are massive, with a wingspan of over 60 meters, making them one of the rare dragon species. This one, with a wingspan exceeding that of a normal adult dragon, must be a overlord level. I never thought I'd see a dragon like this on Burke Island. The hurricane whirlwind dragon's gaze instantly locked onto Whirlwind on the ground. Its body suddenly stopped in midair, its wings only subtly flapping, yet it remained steadily suspended, clearly demonstrating its extremely skilled control over its power. It let out another furious dragon roar, this one louder than before, carrying a strong sense of threat, making everyone's ears buzz and their hearts pound. I should have known. Lin's expression changed, instantly understanding the situation. He quickly shouted to everyone, this is Whirlwind's mother. Whirlwind suddenly appeared on Burke Island yesterday, it must have gotten separated from its mother. Its mother has been looking for it, and this spiral pattern must be a mark it left. Now it sees us surrounding Whirlwind, it must think we stole its baby, which is why it's so angry. Everyone, don't move around, try not to provoke it. Whirlwind clearly recognized its mother as well. Knowing its mother was angry, it huddled into a ball and quickly ran into a nearby rock crevice, only revealing its black grape-like eyes, timidly looking out, not even daring to breathe, its small body still trembling slightly. Before anyone could explain, the hurricane whirlwind dragon suddenly opened its mouth and spewed a large mass of scorching flames. The flames were several meters large, like a giant fireball, carrying rolling heat waves directly towards everyone. Before the flames even got close, everyone felt a searing heat, their skin feeling as if it were about to be scorched, and their hair was blown by the heat wave. Quick, ride your dragons and get out of the way. Lin shouted, quickly flipping onto Myra's back. Mira immediately flapped her wings, carrying Lin rapidly into the air, narrowly dodging the flame attack. The flames landed on the ground with a loud boom, burning several small plants and bushes, emitting thick smoke, and filling the air with a charred smell. The others also reacted, mounting their dragons and quickly ascending. Astrid rode Stormfly, flexibly avoiding the flames. Stormfly's speed was extremely fast, drawing a blue arc in the air. Fishlegs rode Meatball. Although Meatball's speed was slower, he was steady and successfully dodged the flames. Snotlout and Roughnut rode the Deadly Natter, quickly taking off. Hiccup and Snotlout caught up, eventually joining Lin and Astrid in front. Seeing everyone trying to escape, the Hurricane Whirlwind Dragon roared furiously and suddenly began to spin in place. Its wings flapped faster and faster, and the air around its body began to flow rapidly, forming a powerful current. Immediately after, the flames it spewed were caught by the air current, gradually forming a huge flame tornado. This tornado was dozens of meters wide, with flames rapidly spinning inside, emitting a loud, whooshing sound, as if it wanted to suck the entire world in. The surrounding trees and rocks were stirred by the air current, beginning to sway slightly. Oh no! It's going to use its ultimate move. Fishlegs cried out anxiously, his voice full of panic. He tightly gripped Meatball's scales, his body trembling slightly from fear. The book says that while the Hurricane Whirlwind Dragon's flame tornado is incredibly powerful, it cannot move. We should quickly take this opportunity to get away from it. As long as we fly out of the tornado's range, we'll be safe. Everyone immediately sped up, riding their dragons away from the tornado. But they hadn't flown far before they felt a powerful suction coming from behind. The flame tornado was actually moving slowly. And the suction was getting stronger and stronger. Small trees by the roadside were uprooted and sucked into the tornado, instantly burning to ashes. Stones on the ground were also sucked up, flying like bullets towards the tornado, then disappearing into the flames without leaving a trace. The flames grew fiercer, dyeing the entire sky orange-red. The sunlight was blocked, and the world became dim, the scene resembling the end of the world, causing goosebumps and despair. How can this be? The book clearly states that it cannot move when using its flame tornado. Fishlegs' eyes widened, his voice filled with disbelief. He quickly flipped through his manual, trying to find a relevant explanation, but couldn't find one after several pages. Could the book's record be wrong? Or is this Hurricane Whirlwind Dragon different from other Hurricane Whirlwind Dragons, possessing special abilities? It's not that the record was wrong, it's the ley line energy. Lin looked back, cold sweat instantly drenching the clothes on his back. He could clearly see the fire tornado getting closer and closer to them, already feeling its scorching heat. The air around the fire tornado was being sucked in. The ley line energy on Burke Island has been very active recently. Toothless grew stronger after eating monstrous nightmare meat, and Mira also grew faster and became more powerful, all due to absorbing the ley line energy. This Hurricane Whirlwind Dragon must have absorbed ley line energy elsewhere, which is why its abilities have improved. Not only can it use fire tornadoes, but it can also control their movement. Mira, Toothless, and the other dragons also sensed the danger behind them. Their wings flapped faster and faster, struggling with all their might against the suction. Myra's golden scales glowed orange-red in the fire's reflection. Her wings flapped so fast they were almost a blur, and a low growl rumbled in her throat, as if cheering herself on and comforting Lin. Although Toothless was still tired, he gritted his teeth and persevered, his wings flapping with increasing amplitude, his eyes filled with determination. Stormfly, Boulder, and the Deadly Natter also exerted all their strength, their wings flapping at their limit. Yet, despite this, the distance between them and the fire tornado not only failed to increase but was actually shortening little by little. The tornado's suction was simply too strong, like an invisible giant hand trying to drag them back into that terrifying fiery hell. At this rate, we'll be sucked in. Toughnut shouted, his voice tinged with despair. He clutched the Deadly Natter's reins tightly, his knuckles white from the effort, his body trembling slightly with fear. Our dragons have used all their strength. If this continues, they'll be worked to death. Lin, quickly think of something. We can't just sit here and wait to die. Don't panic, everyone. Lin took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. He knew panic was useless now, only by calming down could he think of a solution. He quickly observed the state of the fire tornado and realized that its center seemed to be the weakest point of energy. He immediately shouted to everyone, "Everyone, listen to my command. Let's all use dragon breath to attack the center of the tornado." The power of the fire tornado mainly comes from the rotating airflow in its center. As long as we concentrate our fire and disrupt its rotation, the tornado will slowly dissipate. This is our only chance now. Everyone must aim for the center. Although everyone was filled with fear, they knew this was the only way. They nodded in agreement and immediately maneuvered their dragons to turn around, adjust their direction, and aim at the center of the fire tornado, ready to attack. Astrid was the first to shout, "Stormfly, use dragon breath, aim for the center." Stormfly let out a loud dragon roar, opened her mouth, and spewed a red flame. The flame was extremely hot, heading straight for the tornado's center. Snotlout followed, shouting, "Hookfang, use your strongest breath, show them what you've got." Hookfang roared, opened his mouth, began to inhale, and then continuously spewed a pillar of flame, impacting the tornado's center. Fishlegs also shouted at Meatball, "Meatball, spit out your lava bombs, come on." Meatball nodded, opened his mouth, and spewed a large mass of scorching lava. The lava bomb flew like a meteor, carrying rolling heat waves, towards the tornado's center. Toughnut and Roughnut simultaneously commanded the deadly Natter, "Use gas breath." Lin heard and quickly stopped them, saying, "Twins, stop, you don't need to. Gas breath won't work on it." Lin gently patted Mira's neck and said, "Mira, it's up to you, use your dragon breath." Mira let out a determined, "ooh" sound, opened her mouth, and spewed an orange-red dragon breath. This dragon breath had a faint blue halo, more powerful than the other dragon's attacks, appearing exceptionally dazzling in the air. Hiccup also commanded Toothless to use dragon breath. Although Toothless's plasma breath was second only to Mira's in power, the blue plasma converged with the other attacks in the air, flying together towards the center of the fire tornado. 5 attacks simultaneously struck the center of the fire tornado, producing an earth-shattering boom. The fire tornado shook violently, its surface flames becoming unstable. Some flames were dispersed, flying into the air and falling like meteors, igniting small fires on the ground. Everyone's hearts leapt with joy, thinking the tornado was about to dissipate, but before they could even sigh in relief, the powerful suction returned. The dispersed flames were quickly drawn back by the airflow, and the tornado's power not only didn't weaken but absorbed the dragon breath's energy, becoming larger and more ferocious. "It's useless. Our attacks aren't working at all." Astrid cried out in despair, her eyes full of terror. Stormfly's wing flapping speed visibly slowed after continuously spewing dragon breath, and her body began to tilt slightly, as if she might fall at any moment. "What should we do? Are we really going to die here?" Just as everyone fell into despair, believing all hope was lost, the little whirlwind from the rock crevice suddenly flew out. It flapped its wings, thin as cicadas, its tiny body swaying constantly in the powerful airflow, as if it could be blown away at any moment, yet it bravely flew towards the fire tornado. Instead of fleeing, it followed the fire tornado's airflow, striving to fly to the front of the tornado, its tiny body blocking the space between everyone and the tornado. Before the massive tornado, its figure appeared so small, yet so resolute. Then, it let out a few, ooh cries at the hurricane whirlwind dragon. There was no fear in these cries, only deep grievance and pleading, as if saying to its mother, "Don't hurt them, they are good people, they took care of me." Although its voice was not loud, it pierced through the wind and the roar of the flames, clearly reaching the hurricane whirlwind dragon's ears. A miracle happened. The hurricane whirlwind dragon heard the little whirlwind's cries, and its rotation speed gradually slowed. Its gaze was fixed on the little whirlwind, and a flicker of hesitation, then intense anxiety and tenderness, crossed its golden dragon eyes. Immediately after, the fire tornado's suction began to weaken, the flames gradually diminished, and the rotation speed became slower and slower, finally dissipating slowly into the air, leaving only a faint smell of smoke and a messy ground. Lin breathed a sigh of relief, his heart finally settling. He felt his back was drenched in cold sweat, he had almost fallen off Mira's back just now. He wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, looking at the little whirlwind blocking the way, his heart filled with gratitude. If not for the little whirlwind bravely stepping forward, they would probably have perished there today. The hurricane whirlwind dragon flew out from the dissipated flames. It slowly landed on the open ground, the anger in its red dragon eyes completely gone, replaced by gentleness and tenderness. The hurricane whirlwind dragon let out a gentle, ooh, to the whirlwind and Lin, its voice full of apology, as if apologizing for its previous actions. The whirlwind immediately flew over and nestled into the hurricane whirlwind dragon's embrace, gently rubbing its face with its small red head, emitting affectionate, ooh sounds, as if acting spoiled and recounting its experiences of the past 2 days. Seeing this, everyone also landed on their dragons. Their bodies were still trembling slightly from the fear they had just experienced, but smiles of relief at having survived appeared on their faces. Just then, the hurricane whirlwind dragon and the little whirlwind slowly walked towards the group. Its body was slightly bent, as if expressing apology to everyone, and then it let out 2 ooh cries. Its tone was no longer angry, but rather carried a hint of gratitude. It clearly understood that these humans had not harmed its young, but had taken care of the little whirlwind, which is why it expressed its thanks in this way. The little whirlwind also climbed down from its mother's back. It slowly crawled in front of Lin, gently rubbed Lin's hand with its small red head, and then rubbed the hands of Astrid, Hiccup, Fishlegs, and others, making chirping sounds, as if saying goodbye to them. Its movements were gentle and reluctant. It had clearly developed feelings for the humans who had cared for it these past 2 days. Hiccup squatted down and gently stroked the little whirlwind's head, a reluctant smile on his face. Whirlwind, although taking care of you these past 2 days was tiring, I was still very happy. You must live well with your mother from now on, and don't get separated again because you're too playful, okay? The whirlwind seemed to understand his words, gently licked his fingertips with its small tongue, and then turned to go back to its mother. Subsequently, the hurricane whirlwind dragon spread its massive wings. As its wings flapped, they created a gust of wind that gently swayed the flowers and grass on the ground. It carefully scooped up the little whirlwind with its claw, placed it on its back, and then let out 2 more ooh cries to the crowd, as if making a final farewell. Then, it flapped its wings, slowly ascended into the air with the little whirlwind, and flew towards the distance. The sunlight shone on its silver-gray scales, emitting dazzling light. Soon, its figure became a tiny black dot, gradually disappearing into the clouds. Everyone watched them fly away, smiles of relief on their faces. This sudden crisis finally ended with the reunion of mother and child, and they also gained a deeper understanding of the typhoon whirlwind dragon, and unexpectedly discovered the special ability of an adult hurricane whirlwind dragon after absorbing ley line energy. This trip to the back mountain, though full of danger, was also very rewarding. Alright, it's time for us to head back too. Lin turned around and said to everyone, a relaxed smile on his face. The fear from before had completely vanished, replaced by anticipation for the future. The herbivorous dragon has been settled. Next, we need to continue preparing for the Dragon King's extermination. Today's experience also reminds us that Berk Island's ley line energy is constantly affecting the dragons on the island. We must quickly investigate the ley line energy to improve ourselves. Everyone nodded in agreement, mounted their dragons, and flew towards the dragon training arena. A month later, on a clear morning, the valley behind Berk Island's mountain was vibrant with life, nourished by ley line energy. On the plateau inside the valley, 5 oak houses were scattered, their roofs covered with thick thatch, and each bore its own sign in front of the door. This was the exclusive base of the investigation team. Located directly above the cave where Mira was born, the ley line energy here was most concentrated, and the air even carried a faint warm tide. At the bottom of the valley, the small pond above the original cave had converged into a clear pool. Streams from the back mountain meandered into it, and the overflowing water flowed along a path to the herbivorous dragon prairie a kilometer away, eventually merging into the sea, forming a self-sufficient natural landscape. Lin was straddling Myra's back, deep in concentration, on the central plateau located on the edge of the valley's cliff. Myra's black scales glowed with a moist luster in the morning light, looking even more robust than a month ago, but she was struggling with the stone target in front of her. Toothless, demonstrate it again. Slowly, Lin called out to Toothless, who was not far away. Toothless flew over in response, a low purr rumbling in his throat. His chest scales slightly parted, and a faint blue glow slowly appeared in his mouth, accompanied by a buzzing sound of energy accumulating, before steadily firing. The blue plasma fireball accurately hit the stone target, exploding into a blue halo. Stone chips flew, and a circle of blue shockwaves swept over, making Lin's hair flutter backward. Remember this feeling of energy condensation, don't rush to release it, Lin gently guided Mira, looking down. Mira let out a low growl, opening her dragon mouth to start drawing air to converge within it. But just as it was halfway condensed, it uncontrollably turned into an ordinary fireball and shot out, slow and far less powerful than Toothless's plasma fireball, leaving only a shallow scorch mark on the stone target. Mira shook her head, looking a bit dejected, and nudged Lin's hand with her snout. Lin gently stroked her neck. It's okay, controlling the plasma fireball takes time. We'll try again. His tone was calm and patient, without any hint of impatience, and his eyes were full of trust in Mira. On another plateau in the valley, Hiccup was busy in the makeshift blacksmith shop next to his house. Hammers, chisels, and other tools hung on the wooden racks of the blacksmith shop. The ground was covered with fireproof stone slabs, and the air was filled with the smell of grinding metal. He held a piece of white monstrous nightmare dragon bone, hard in texture, and was meticulously grinding it with a whetstone. Just a little more shaping, and it can be used to make Toothless's tail fin framework, Hiccup murmured to himself, occasionally looking up at Toothless in the air and gesturing with his fingers to measure the size. On the wooden table beside him lay neatly cut thick dragon hide, its edges sewn with tough animal sinews, waiting to be joined with the dragon bone frame. His brows were slightly furrowed, his expression focused, and fine beads of sweat trickled down his forehead, yet he was completely unaware. For him, crafting the most satisfactory tail fin for Toothless was more important than anything else. Stormfly, lock onto the left bullseye. Astrid's voice was crisp and decisive, carrying an undeniable command. She circled at low altitude on Stormfly, whose blue scales were bright and dazzling, and whose tail spikes were lighter and sharper than before her evolution. Ever since Lin discovered that Stormfly's tail spikes had a hollow structure after evolution, capable of producing a liquid internally, which could then be transported through tubes connecting to the tail spikes for explosive liquid, Astrid had become obsessed with this blasting tactic. Stormfly let out a clear dragon roar, her wings fiercely flapped, and her body traced a smooth arc in the air, her tail tip precisely aimed at the distant wooden bullseye. A sharp tail spike shot out with a whistling sound, and with a loud bang. It violently exploded the moment it hit. Wood chips flew, a flash of fire, and the entire target was blown to smithereens. Astrid steadily controlled Stormfly to land, a confident and flamboyant smile gracing her lips. She raised a hand to brush away stray hairs from her forehead. Perfect. This power is more than enough to deal with a group of dragons. Her eyes were sharp as an eagle's, revealing an inherent competitiveness and decisiveness, clearly very satisfied with Stormfly's evolved ability. Meatball, charge. Fishleg's voice came from the plateau below, carrying a hint of excitement and anticipation. Lin followed the sound and saw Fishlegs sitting on the sturdy Meatball's back. This Gronkle was now a size larger than a month ago, its dark brown scales rough like rocks, and its four limbs thick and powerful. It stood steadily before a giant rock taller than a person. Upon receiving the command, it let out a low growl, its mouth wide open, and scorching lava poured out like a red waterfall, with rolling heat waves washing over them. The originally hard giant rock was instantly enveloped in lava, its surface quickly burning red, emitting sizzling sounds. Before long, it softened and flowed, eventually turning into a puddle of dark red magma, which solidified into black fragments upon cooling. Good boy, you're amazing. Fishleg's eyes narrowed in a smile. He quickly pulled out a fresh fish from his backpack and carefully offered it to Meatball's mouth. Meatball docilely lowered its head and swallowed, letting out a satisfied purr. Fishlegs then pulled out his dragon observation manual and quickly took notes, his eyes filled with fascination and rigor. Lava waterfall sustained output excellent, melting point significantly improved, effect exceeds expectations. His personality remained obsessed with dragon research, and every small improvement made him overjoyed. Not far away, Toughnut and Roughnut were riding the deadly Natter Belch and Baff, staging a gas blast. Baff, release the gas. Toughnut's voice was loud, carrying his inherent roughness and excitement. Baff's green head immediately sprayed a cloud of gray gas, which quickly spread, enveloping the target like a large net. Belch, ignite. Roughnut's voice was crisp and direct, without any unnecessary words. Belch's red head then shot out a stream of flame. The moment the flame passed through the smoke, with a loud bang, the gas violently exploded, and the shockwave sent the surrounding fallen leaves swirling everywhere. When the smoke cleared, the target was nowhere to be seen, leaving only a shallow pit in the ground. Ha ha. That was awesome. Toughnut excitedly patted Baff's neck, his personality flamboyant and outgoing, wishing the whole world knew how formidable they were. Roughnut crossed her arms, a barely perceptible smile playing on her lips, her eyes full of pride and approval. Not bad. Next time, try expanding the gas range to take out more targets at once. The deadly Natter seemed to understand the praise, and both heads simultaneously let out excited roars, making the surrounding pebbles tremble slightly. Hookfang, use that move. Snotlout stood with his hands on his hips at the edge of the training ground, his voice quite loud, with a bit of a boisterous energy. Beside him was Hookfang the crimson monstrous nightmare, whose scales were like quenched steel, appearing exceptionally fierce. Upon receiving the command, Hookfang roared, his voice loud and deafening. He suddenly raised his sharp right claw, and then, 3 concentrated pillars of flame simultaneously erupted from the palm of his right claw and the base of the wing on the same side. Flames also shot backward from his back, and the powerful thrust made him instantly turn into an afterimage, charging forward. 3 streaks of fiery light cut through the air, precisely hitting the stone target. With a loud boom, the stone target was directly split with 3 deep cracks, from which fierce flames still burned, and black smoke billowed. That's incredible. This flame rush slash move is simply invincible. Snotlout jumped up excitedly, gesticulating wildly, his personality still carefree and easily ignited by thrilling scenes. Hookfang let out a low growl at him, as if seeking praise, and flicked his tail. The flames gradually extinguished, and his eyes held a hint of triumph. Suddenly, an urgent shout came from below the stone platform in the valley, like a stone breaking the tranquility of the training. Captain Lin. Chief Stoik wants you to return to the village immediately. There's an urgent matter at the seaside. The one shouting was Tori, a young Viking from the tribe. He was bent over, hands on his knees, breathing heavily, his coarse cloth tunic soaked with sweat and sticking to his back. His face was full of anxiety as he scrambled up the steps, his eyes fixed on Lin in the center of the training ground, as if delaying the message by even a second would lead to disaster. Lin was guiding Mira to adjust the rhythm of her fireball condensation. Hearing the shout, he immediately patted Myra's neck. The red and blue energy in Myra's mouth suddenly retracted, dissipating into a wisp of smoke. It let out a low, disgruntled growl and nudged Lin's palm with its nose, seemingly complaining about the interrupted training. Hold on a moment. Tori is so panicked, something serious must have happened. Lin's voice was steady, but a hint of solemnity was hard to conceal. He dismounted Mira and quickly walked toward Tori. What exactly happened? What did the chief say? Tori swallowed, caught his breath, and spoke quickly. This morning, Uncle Olaf went fishing at sea. Just as he pulled up his net, he was attacked by a group of dragons. Not only were all the fish stolen, but Uncle Olaf was also scratched by a dragon's claw. He's down by the sea now. The chief wants you to hurry over, he said he has an important decision to discuss with you. Injured. Lin's brow furrowed sharply. Olaf was one of the most experienced fishermen in the tribe, agile and skilled. A few ordinary dragons wouldn't even be able to get close to him. Since he was seriously injured, it suggests that the attacking dragons were numerous, or perhaps included evolved dragon species. Hiccup, standing at the edge of the training ground, heard the words, dragon attack, and immediately put down the grindstone and monstrous nightmare dragon bone in his hands. He wiped the sweat from his forehead. He had been so focused on grinding the dragon bone that tiny beads of sweat had formed, some even dripping onto the bone, leaving a wet mark. Could there be movement at the dragon's nest? He quickly walked over to Lin. Toothless followed closely behind, emitting a low rumble from his throat, his golden eyes full of vigilance. Astrid also maneuvered Stormfly to land. Stormfly's blue scales shone brightly in the sunlight, and the spikes on her tail still carried the smell of gunpowder from the recent explosion training. Whatever it is, let's head back to the village and see. Her tone was sharp. She raised a hand to brush away stray hairs from her forehead, her eyes showing determination. Stormfly, let's go. Stormfly let out a crisp dragon roar, spread her wings, and stirred up a gust of wind. Fishlegs was squatting beside Meatball, feeding him fresh dried fish. Hearing the commotion, he immediately stood up, still clutching half a fish that hadn't been fed yet. Meatball seemed to sense the unusual atmosphere. He stopped chewing, lifted his head, and looked at Lin with deep brown eyes, letting out a low responsive sound. We should hurry over too. We might need to record the characteristics of the dragon attack. Fishlegs quickly stuffed the dried fish into his backpack, pulled out his dragon observation manual, and swiftly marked his place with a bookmark, afraid of missing any potential information. Toughnut and Roughnut were resting on the backs of the deadly natter Baff and Belch. Hearing the call, Toughnut immediately patted Baff's neck and shouted excitedly, "Is it finally time to fight? It's the perfect chance for these dragons to taste the power of me, the strongest Viking." Roughnut reached out and delivered a crisp slap to the back of his head. After checking Belch's mouth to make sure no fire residue remained, she nodded and said, "Don't you dare become a snack for those evil dragons. I'm the strongest and the fiercest." Snotlout stood with his hands on his hips, just about to ask Hookfang to demonstrate the fire slash again. Seeing that everyone was preparing to leave, he quickly shouted, "Hookfang, we're going too. Maybe we can take care of a few troublesome dragons along the way." Hookfang let out a loud roar. His crimson scales looked like burning charcoal in the sunlight, making him appear exceptionally fierce. "Move out." Lin gave the order and was the first to mount Myra's back. Myra's black wings unfolded, and with a powerful thrust of wind pressure, she instantly shot into the sky. The airflow generated by her wingbeats swept up a few fallen leaves from the ground, sending them spinning in the air. Toothless followed closely. Hiccup swung onto his back, not forgetting to look back and secure the new tail fin prototype from the blacksmith's shop. It was a frame made of white monstrous nightmare dragon bone, already polished smooth around the edges, just waiting for the final dragon hide splicing. Stormfly, Meatball, Deadly Natter, and Hookfang ascended in turn. The 6 dragons, carrying their respective riders, formed a line and flew toward the village. The distance from the valley to the village was not far. As the dragons skimmed low over the herbivorous dragon prairie, the herbivorous dragons below looked up, some stopping their chewing, others even running a few steps, seemingly sensing the tension in the air. Crossing the dense forest, the coastline gradually became clear. Salty, damp sea wind mixed with the smell of fish rushed toward them. Before they even reached the coast, they heard a burst of noisy shouts, as if countless people were arguing. Emotions of anger and sorrow were clearly carried to their ears by the wind. "The seashore is right ahead." Astrid pointed to the dense crowd in front of them, and Stormfly gradually slowed down. "So many people are gathered, Uncle Olaf must be there." Lin narrowed his eyes. Through a gap in the crowd, he vaguely saw a figure leaning against a reef. It was Olaf. His left arm hung limply, the sleeve torn open to reveal a claw mark deep enough to show bone. The wound was still bleeding, staining the surrounding fabric red. His face was smeared with blood and seawater, his hair was plastered wetly to his forehead, and his complexion was paper white. His lips were cracked, and he was weakly saying something, having to gasp for breath after every sentence. Chief Stoik stood beside Olaf, his tall figure standing with hands on his hips. His face was so dark it looked like it could drip water, and his thick beard trembled slightly with anger. His gaze swept over the surrounding villagers, then turned to the dozens of warships neatly lined up in the harbor. The hulls of those warships were built from hard oak. Oars rested neatly against the sides, and the prows were carved with ferocious dragon head patterns. They were clearly a prepared fighting force, ready to set sail at a moment's notice. Mira landed steadily in the open space beside Stoik. As she folded her wings, she created a gust of wind that caused the clothes of the surrounding villagers to flutter slightly. Lin dismounted quickly and walked toward Stoik. His eyes first fell on Olaf's wound, then shifted to Stoik, and he asked in a deep voice, "Chief, how is Uncle Olaf? What exactly happened?" Stoik took a deep breath, his voice hoarse but carrying undeniable authority. This morning, Olaf went fishing at sea. Just as he netted a full catch of cod, he was attacked by 3 deadly natters and 1 inferno dragon. He pointed to Olaf's wound. That inferno dragon's claw slashed his arm, and all the fish were stolen. Stealing the fish is one thing, but injuring a person. We cannot tolerate this insult. A Viking with a full beard suddenly stepped forward. His name was Borg, and he was the tribe's hunter. 3 years ago, his younger brother was taken by a dragon, and his remains were never found. He raised the axe in his hand, the blade glinting coldly in the sunlight, and shouted angrily, "Chief, we should have settled the score with the dragon's nest long ago. Over the years, how many of our people have been killed or had their food stolen by dragons? Now we have such a strong dragon riding team and so many warships, it's time for revenge. Yes. Revenge. Avenge Olaf. Let's attack the dragon's nest and wipe out all those monsters. We can't let dragons walk all over us anymore." The villagers were like lit powder kegs. Angry shouts rose one after another, and every face was etched with hatred and resolve. Some villagers raised their spears, others waved their shields, and some stomped their feet so hard that the ground trembled slightly. The air was thick with a fervent desire for revenge. Stoik raised a hand to signal the villagers to quiet down, but his own eyes were burning with fury. He looked at the warships in the harbor, then glanced at Lin's team of 6 dragons, and said firmly, "I prepared these warships long ago precisely to solve the dragon menace once and for all. I called you here today to have your team act as the vanguard and lead everyone in attacking the dragon's nest." Lin's heart sank heavily, as if struck by a massive boulder. He subconsciously looked at Hiccup, and a trace of solemnity flashed in both their eyes. Based on their current strength, although Mira hadn't fully mastered the plasma fireball yet, the power of her ordinary fireballs had already increased by 30% compared to the beginning. Toothless's plasma blast was growing stronger, the blue fireballs easily shattering massive rocks. Stormfly's explosive tail spikes had the power of a grenade, and their accuracy was constantly improving. Meatball's lava cascade could melt rocks taller than a person within 10 seconds. The deadly Natter's gas blast could instantly destroy a target. Hookfang's flame-slash could even cleave through hard stone targets. It should have been more than enough to deal with the Red Death from the original story. But the problem was that the appearance of ley line energy had disrupted everything. A thought instantly flashed through Lin's mind. The Red Death lived deep within the volcano, and the volcano was precisely where the ley line energy was most concentrated. The Red Death in the original story was already a massive, terrifyingly powerful dragon king, over 100 meters long, with wings that could cover half the sky, and fire breath capable of igniting an entire fleet of warships. If it absorbed the ley line energy and completed its evolution, what would it become? Would its fire be hotter, or would it be able to unleash new skills? Could it even become faster, with harder scales? He recalled the hurricane whirlwind dragon they encountered a month ago. Originally, according to records, the hurricane whirlwind dragon's fire tornado couldn't move, but after absorbing ley line energy, it could move and even increase its suction power. As a dragon king, the Red Death's ability to sense and absorb energy must be far greater than ordinary dragons, and its evolved capabilities would definitely exceed their imagination. "Chief, wait." Lin quickly stepped forward, reaching out to stop Stoik, who was about to give the order. His tone was urgent yet steady. "We cannot attack rashly." Stoik frowned deeply, his tone displeased. "Lin, what do you mean? Olaf is still bleeding right now, and our people have suffered countless casualties over the years. We now have the Dragon Rider squad and warships. This is the perfect time for revenge. Why are you stopping us? It's not stopping you, it's that we know nothing about the current Red Death." Lin raised his voice slightly, trying to make his words penetrate the crowd's clamor. "Chief, have you forgotten about the ley line energy on Burke Island? A month ago, we encountered the hurricane whirlwind dragon. It was able to move while releasing its fire tornado precisely because it absorbed ley line energy, which is completely different from what is recorded in the books. The Red Death lives in a volcano, where the ley line energy is dense. If it absorbed that energy and evolved, our current combat strength might not be enough to handle it." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the angry villagers around him, and continued, "We don't know if the power of its fire has increased, if it has new skills, or even if its body size has grown. A blind attack will only lead to more of our people sacrificing themselves. This isn't revenge, it's suicide. Hiccup also quickly stepped forward, clutching the monstrous nightmare dragon bone in his hand, and spoke earnestly, Chief, Lin is right. Toothless previously ate the monstrous nightmare's meat and absorbed ley line energy. His size increased significantly, and now he can use a much more powerful ion blast. As a Dragon King, the Red Death's evolved abilities will definitely be more terrifying. We cannot risk the lives of our people. Risk. Berg shouted again, his eyes red with anger, pointing at Olaf. When my brother was snatched by a dragon 3 years ago, who took a risk for him? Olaf is lying here now, who feels his pain. We have endured for too long, and now that we have a chance for revenge, why should we wait? That's right. We can't wait. We've already lost too many loved ones. Even if the Red Death has become stronger, we have so many dragons and so many warships. Can't we still defeat it? The emotions of the villagers boiled over again, the angry voices surging like a tide, nearly drowning out Lin and Hiccup. Stoic clenched his fists tightly, his knuckles turning white. He looked at the angry villagers before him and recalled the tribesmen who had died because of the dragon plague. There were fishermen attacked by dragons while fishing, and warriors who sacrificed themselves defending the tribe. These memories were like sharp knives, stabbing at his heart, and the fury for revenge burned in his chest, threatening to overwhelm his reason. Chief, give us 1 day. Lin stepped forward, his tone resolute. Give us 1 day to sneak into the dragon's nest and scout the Red Death's situation. We will find out if it has evolved, what new abilities it possesses, and how many dragon guards are in the dragon's nest. At the same time, the tribe can use this day to resupply the warships and prepare weapons for the villagers, ensuring everything is more thoroughly prepared. He looked at Astrid, who immediately understood, stepped forward, and said with sharp eyes, Chief, Stormfly's explosive tail spikes can easily blast open rocks. If we encounter danger during reconnaissance, we can quickly break out. Just give us 1 day, and we will definitely bring back useful intelligence. Fishlegs also pulled the dragon observation manual from his backpack, flipping to a page illustrated with various dragon forms and attack methods. I will record the Red Death's size, scale color, fire type, and even its breathing rate. This data will help us formulate more precise tactics. If it truly has evolved, we can find its weaknesses in advance. Although Toughnut was warlike, he knew the consequences of recklessness. He scratched his head and said gruffly, it's only 1 day anyway. Once we know the situation, the fight will be even more exciting. Then I'll have Baff and Belch surround the Red Death with gas first, and then light it up. I guarantee it'll be blown dizzy. Roughnut nodded and added, we can use this day to train the deadly natter's accuracy in igniting the gas remotely, avoiding friendly fire. Snotlout also shouted, Hookfang flies fast and can scout the path for us during reconnaissance. His flame / can also deal with small groups of dragons, protecting everyone. Hookfang seemed to understand, letting out a loud roar and flapping his wings, raising a gust of wind. Stoic looked at the resolute squad before him, then at the weakened Olaf lying on the reef, took a deep breath, and tried hard to suppress the anger in his heart. He knew Lin made sense. As chief, he could not be solely dominated by anger, he had to be responsible for the safety of the entire tribe. If more tribesmen were sacrificed because of a moment of impulse, then he would not be a competent chief. After a moment of silence, Stoic raised his hand and heavily slapped the nearby reef, causing small stones to rattle down. His voice was steady and powerful, carrying across the entire beach. Silence. The villagers, shouting gradually subsided, and all eyes focused on Stoic. Lin is right, we cannot risk things blindly. Stoic's gaze swept over every villager. Give the Dragon Rider squad 1 day to infiltrate the dragon's nest for reconnaissance. During this day, everyone is to carry out their duties. Shipwrights check the hulls and oars of the warships to ensure there is no damage. Hunters prepare weapons and arrows, and sharpen more axes. Women prepare rations and water to resupply the warships. He paused, looking at Lin's squad, his eyes filled with trust and worry. You must prioritize safety. If you encounter danger, retreat immediately. Do not try to be heroes. We will wait for you to bring back intelligence, and then we will formulate the attack plan together. Yes, Chief. Lin's squad responded in unison, smiles of relief on their faces. Afterward, the squad members each mounted their respective dragons and ascended into the air again. 6 dragons lined up in a row and flew toward the dragon's nest. The sea breeze blew against them, carrying a salty, damp scent, and the sound of their wings flapping echoed uniformly and powerfully over the sea. After leaving the village, the dragon group flew northeast of Burke Island. According to tribal legends and Toothless's previous visit, the Red Death's dragon's nest was located on a volcanic island to the southeast, about half a day's journey from Burke Island. Hiccup, riding Toothless, flew next to Lin, holding the white monstrous nightmare dragon bone in his hand. He couldn't help but ask, "Do you think the Red Death has really evolved?" Lin looked at the sea ahead, his brows slightly furrowed. It's highly possible. The ley line energy in the volcano is much denser than in our valley. The Red Death lives there, exposed to ley line energy every day, so there's no reason it wouldn't absorb it. And don't forget, Toothless only ate monstrous nightmare meat that contained ley line energy and became stronger. The Red Death lives directly near the energy source, so the probability of it evolving is almost 100%. Astrid, riding Stormfly, also came closer. Her hair was a bit messy from the sea breeze, but she didn't mind at all. Whether it has evolved or not, Stormfly's explosive tail spikes can handle it. We tested it last time. Stormfly's tail spikes can blast through half a meter of rock. Even if the Red Death's scales are hard, they won't be able to withstand it. Stormfly seemed to understand, letting out a clear dragon roar, her tail spikes subtly shaking, as if demonstrating her power. Fishlegs sat on Meatball's back, holding a dragon observation manual, quickly jotting something down. If the Red Death has truly evolved, it might have these changes: increased size, thicker scales, higher flame temperature, and possibly even new attack methods, like that Alpha Hurricane Whirlwind Dragon. I need to record all these possibilities so we can compare them later. Meatball let out a low response, seemingly agreeing with Fishleg's analysis. Toughnut and Roughnut rode the deadly Natter, flying at the rear of the group. Toughnut excitedly shouted, "No matter how it evolves, our gas blast will come in handy. As long as Baff releases enough gas, and then Belch ignites it, even the Red Death will be stunned." Roughnut rolled her eyes at him but didn't retort, merely reaching out to touch Belch's head, as if confirming its condition. Toughnut, riding Hookfang, flew a bit unsteadily. He hugged Hookfang's neck tightly and shouted, "Hookfang's flame / is the real deal. Last time we tested it, it split a giant rock with 3 slashes. If the Red Death dares to block us, Hookfang will definitely leave a few marks on it." Hookfang let out a loud roar, its crimson scales gleaming in the sunlight, appearing exceptionally fierce. Everyone discussed back and forth, the tension gradually replaced by the anticipation of the upcoming reconnaissance mission. However, after they had flown for about an hour, a thick mist suddenly appeared on the sea ahead. The mist seemed to rise out of nowhere from the seabed. The grayish-white fog was so dense it was almost impenetrable, and visibility instantly dropped to less than 10 meters. The mist also carried a faint, pungent smell of sulfur, obviously drifting from the direction of the volcano. The sky also gradually darkened. The previously clear sky was covered by thick clouds, leaving only an oppressive grayness. Even the sea breeze turned chilling, blowing across their faces with a hint of cold. The small team's conversations gradually died down, and everyone's expressions became solemn. This sudden mist was too strange. It was neither like the common morning fog by the sea nor ordinary sea fog. Instead, it resembled a natural barrier, deliberately blocking outsiders from approaching the dragon's nest. "Everyone, slow down and maintain formation." Lin's voice, steady and strong, carried through the mist to everyone. Hiccup, Toothless is more sensitive to the dragon's nest scent, let him lead the way. "No problem," Hiccup replied, patting Toothless's neck. "Toothless, it's up to you. Find the direction of the dragon's nest." Toothless let out a low response, its green eyes glowing faintly in the mist, seemingly able to penetrate the fog and sense the distant aura. It adjusted its flight direction, heading towards the denser mist, its wing beats becoming smaller to minimize noise. Lin, riding Mira, followed behind Toothless. Myra's black scales glowed faintly in the mist, like a small lamp, illuminating a few meters ahead. Lin gripped the dragon saddle's reins tightly, his gaze warily scanning the surroundings, his ears carefully listening to the movements in the mist. Besides the sound of dragon wings flapping and the howling sea breeze, there seemed to be other subtle noises, like the sound of rocks rubbing, or waves crashing against reefs. Watch out on the left. Astrid suddenly shouted, a hint of tension in her voice. Her vision was the best among them. Even in the mist, she could vaguely see a dark shadow not far to the left. Everyone quickly looked to the left, only to see a huge black silhouette emerge in the mist. It was a stone pillar resembling a coral reef. This stone pillar was entirely black, with an uneven surface, as if formed by cooled volcanic lava. Its top was sharp, and its base submerged in the sea, with the part exposed above the water reaching 10 meters high. If they accidentally crashed into it, the dragons would be lightly injured, or worse, fall directly into the sea. Toothless skillfully turned sideways, its wings brushing past the surface of the stone pillar, creating a sha-sha sound as the wing edges collided with the pillar. Mira followed closely, Lin tightly controlling Mira to avoid the protruding parts of the stone pillar. Stormfly was the fastest. Astrid gave a gentle tug on the reins, and Stormfly zipped around the stone pillar like lightning, her tail spikes almost scraping its surface. There are many stone pillars here. Fishlegs' voice was filled with surprise. These stone pillars are arranged very irregularly, like a sudden barrier. He pulled out his dragon observation manual and quickly sketched the shape and approximate location of the stone pillars. The material of these stone pillars is the same as volcanic rock. They must have risen from the sea around the volcanic island and formed their current appearance after years of erosion by ocean waves. As they delved deeper into the mist, more and more stone pillars appeared before their eyes. Some stone pillars stood alone, while others formed dense reef formations in groups of 3 to 5. These stone pillars varied in height, some were only 2 or 3 meters tall, hidden on the sea surface, easily crashed into if one wasn't careful. Others were over 10 meters high, appearing particularly menacing in the mist. Watch out below. Hiccup suddenly shouted, his gaze fixed on the sea surface below. A small black tip was visible on the sea surface. If one didn't look carefully, it would be completely unnoticed. It was a stone pillar half buried in the sea, with only its tip exposed. If a dragon flew too low, it could easily hit its underside. Toothless immediately pulled up its flight altitude, and Mira, Stormfly, and the other dragons also ascended. Meatball's agility was the lowest, and its flight speed the slowest. Fishlegs tightly controlled Meatball, avoiding the surrounding stone pillars, fearing that Meatball's massive body would collide with the reefs. Toughnut and Roughnut, riding the deadly Natter, flew with extreme caution. Baff and Belch were larger than Toothless and Stormfly, so Roughnut constantly watched the surroundings, and as soon as she spotted a stone pillar, she immediately commanded the deadly Natter to change direction. There are 2 stone pillars on the left, very close together. We'll go around to the right. Roughnut's voice was calm, carrying an unquestionable command. The deadly Natter obediently flew to the right, successfully avoiding the 2 closely arranged stone pillars. Snotlout, riding Hookfang, flew somewhat clumsily. Although Hookfang was agile, Snotlout's control skills were not as good as the others. Several times he almost crashed into stone pillars, but Hookfang, relying on its own reaction speed, forcibly changed direction and averted danger. Hookfang, slow down. I'm losing my grip. Snotlout hugged Hookfang's neck tightly, a hint of panic in his voice. There's another stone pillar ahead, quickly dodge it. Hookfang let out a low growl, its wings suddenly flapped, and it flew to the right, narrowly avoiding the stone pillar. The scales on the edge of its wings scraped against the pillar's surface, and a few small scales fell off. After flying in the mist for about half an hour, the fog ahead gradually thinned. Toothless suddenly accelerated, letting out an excited growl, seemingly having sensed the dragon's nest's presence. That's the volcanic island ahead. Lin's eyes lit up. Through the thinning mist, he vaguely saw the black silhouette ahead. It was a massive volcano, standing on the sea level, its body dark and covered in cracks. From time to time, red lava overflowed from the cracks, flowing down the mountain, forming a scorching lava zone at the foot of the mountain, heating the surrounding seawater and emitting white steam. Everyone sped up, passing through the last layer of mist, and the sight before them made everyone hold their breath. The volcanic island was not large, yet it exuded a suffocating sense of danger. The top of the volcano was a massive crater. The volcanic rock walls were covered with large and small caves, where countless dragons were curled up, sleeping in the caves or on the rock walls. There were monstrous nightmares, entirely red, curled into balls, their scales glowing red in the reflection of the lava. There were blue deadly natters, their wings pressed tightly against the rock wall, their tails hanging in midair, occasionally swaying gently. There were also dark brown gronkles, lying at the cave entrance, their huge bodies blocking the way, letting out heavy breaths. The entire volcanic island was eerily quiet, there was no sound of wind, only the sizzling of flowing magma and the breathing of dragons, mixing together to form a strange and oppressive atmosphere that made one's scalp tingle. We'll enter through the opening on the mountainside. Lin pointed to a concealed opening halfway up the volcano, hidden by dense vines whose color was similar to the volcanic rock. Unless one looked closely, it would be completely unnoticeable. That opening looks quite hidden, hard to spot, and its position is suitable. It should lead to the interior of the crater. Everyone nodded and followed Lin, flying towards that opening. Mira slowed down, gently flapping her wings to minimize noise, with Toothless close behind. The opening was wider than expected, spacious enough for two dragons to fly side by side. The walls inside the opening were scorching hot from the magma, radiating a deep red glow. The air was filled with a thick smell of sulfur and dragon breath, mixing together to be particularly pungent. Everyone entered the opening one by one. Inside the cave, it was pitch black, with only the occasional light of magma seeping through cracks illuminating the path ahead. Myra's black scales emitted a faint sheen in the darkness. Lin signaled everyone to slow their breathing and minimize movement. Everyone held their breath, and even the dragon's breathing became slight. After flying for about several dozen meters, the passage suddenly opened up, revealing a massive space. This was the interior of the volcano crater. The interior of the crater was circular, measuring hundreds of meters in diameter. The surrounding walls were covered with the caves they had seen earlier. Hundreds of dragons were curled up sleeping in the caves or on the walls, their breathing rising and falling. The bottom of the crater was a scorching magma pool, where red magma churned and bubbled. Occasionally, magma would splash up, landing on the surrounding rocks with a sizzling sound, illuminating the entire crater interior deep red. The investigation team members hovered in the mid-air inside the crater, unconsciously holding their breath. Even the dragons slowed the speed of their wing beats, afraid of waking the sleeping dragons. Lin's gaze swept over the surrounding dragon group, secretly counting. There were at least 100 dragons, with monstrous nightmares and deadly natters making up the majority, plus a dozen or so gronkles. So many dragons. Hiccup's voice was extremely low, barely audible to anyone but Lin. The Red Death is at the bottom. Lin shook his head, looking toward the magma pool at the bottom of the crater. According to the original works setting, the Red Death should be lurking at the bottom of the crater, or in the deepest cave within the crater. Just as he was about to signal everyone to approach the magma pool for investigation, Toothless and Mira suddenly stopped moving simultaneously, their bodies tense. Myra's golden eyes were fixed on the magma pool at the bottom of the crater, and she let out a rapid growl filled with alertness. Lin's heart sank, and he immediately followed Myra's gaze toward the magma pool. The magma in the magma pool churned even more violently, and the bubbles increased. It seemed as if something was about to emerge from the magma. Everyone be careful. Lin's voice was extremely low, yet full of vigilance. Prepare for an emergency. As soon as he finished speaking, a massive magma pillar suddenly erupted from the center of the magma pool, towering over 10 meters high. Red magma splashed out, landing on the surrounding rocks with a sizzling sound. Immediately afterward, a huge flame shot out from the magma pool, like a scorching fire dragon, carrying rolling heat waves and rushing toward the team members. Quick! Dodge! Lin shouted, abruptly patting Myra's neck. Mira reacted instantly, giving a powerful flap of her wings and flying to the left, avoiding the flame attack. Toothless's reaction was also extremely fast. Hiccup tightly controlled Toothless, flying to the right and avoiding the flame. Stormfly flew upward like lightning. Astrid's gaze was sharp, fixed on the trajectory of the flame, ensuring Stormfly wouldn't be affected. Meatball's reaction was slightly slower. Fishlegs shouted anxiously, Meatball, fly up quickly. Meatball let out a low growl, vigorously flapping its wings and flying upward. The flame grazed its abdomen, scorching a few dark brown scales. The deadly Natter, Zippelback, and Hookfang also dodged the flames. Baff and Belch flew to the left, while Hookfang flexibly flew downward, hiding behind a massive rock. However, the Red Death's flame had an enormous range. Although it didn't hit anyone directly, the flame struck the rocks at the entrance, causing a violent collapse. With a loud boom, the rocks above the entrance fell, instantly sealing the opening completely, blocking their only retreat. Hiccup cursed, his face turning pale as he looked at the blocked entrance. We can only fly out through the top of the crater now. To make matters worse, the Red Death's flames and the sound of the collapse woke up all the dragons on the walls. Hundreds of dragons simultaneously opened their eyes and let out terrified roars. The sound was deafening, nearly shattering the rocks inside the crater. They all took flight from the walls, spreading their wings and frantically fleeing toward the mouth of the crater. Charge out! Fly towards the top of the crater! Lin shouted, controlling Mira as she flew toward the crater summit. Myra's black wings flapped faster and faster, and red flames gathered in her mouth, ready to deal with any dragons that might attack. Toothless followed closely. Hiccup directed Toothless to shoot a blue plasma fireball, hitting an oncoming deadly Natter. With a loud bang, the deadly Natter was struck by the fireball, letting out a painful shriek, and plunged into the magma pool below, where it was swallowed whole by a massive mouth. The Red Death revealed half of its body, using its two front claws to climb out onto the platform at the edge of the magma pool. Even just half of it was 60 meters long. The sound of the deadly Natter's bones being chewed was clearly audible. Astrid controlled Stormfly, aiming the sharp spike on her tail tip at a monstrous nightmare. With a swoosh, the spike shot out and hit the monstrous nightmare's wing. With a bang, the spike exploded. A large hole was blown into the monstrous nightmare's wing, causing it to lose balance and fall downward. Fishlegs directed Meatball to spew a lava waterfall. The scorching lava landed in front of several gronkles, forming a wall of fire that blocked their attack. Toughnut and Roughnut commanded the deadly Natter, Zippelback. Baff spewed gray gas, surrounding several monstrous nightmares, and Belch immediately shot fire. With a bang, the gas exploded, leaving the monstrous nightmares dizzy and temporarily unable to pursue. Snotlout commanded Hookfang, using Flame Rush Slash. 3 pillars of flame shot out from Hookfang's right claw and wings, instantly turning him into an afterimage, charging through the encirclement of several deadly Natters and flying toward the top of the crater. Just as everyone was struggling to break out and about to fly to the top of the crater, a massive monstrous nightmare suddenly lost control. Its wing had been grazed by Stormfly's exploding tail spike earlier, causing it to lose balance, and it frantically crashed toward Stormfly. Watch out! Astrid shouted, trying to control Stormfly to dodge to the left, but it was too late. With a loud bang, the monstrous nightmare slammed hard into Stormfly's right wing. Stormfly let out a painful shriek, her right wing instantly losing strength, and she began plummeting downward. Astrid's body was swaying precariously on Stormfly's back. She tightly gripped Stormfly's reins, yet the massive impact still threw her sideways, half her body suspended in midair. Ah! She let out a scream, her voice filled with fear, moments away from falling off Stormfly's back. Stormfly tried desperately to stabilize herself, but her injured right wing couldn't provide enough lift. Her descent speed increased rapidly, plummeting toward the magma pool at the bottom of the crater. Astrid. Hiccup heard the scream, looked back, and his expression instantly changed. He immediately controlled Toothless to turn around, giving up the chance to rush toward the top of the crater, and flew toward the direction Astrid was falling. Toothless, hurry! Faster! Hiccup's voice was filled with urgency. His hands gripped Toothless's scales tightly, his fingernails nearly digging in. Toothless let out a rapid growl, flapping his wings faster and faster. Blue plasma energy gathered in his mouth, but he didn't fire. He knew this wasn't the time to attack. He had to reach Astrid as quickly as possible. Stormfly sensed Astrid's danger and also unleashed her potential. Enduring the sharp pain in her right wing, she vigorously flapped her left wing, trying to slow her descent, while simultaneously letting out a clear dragon roar, as if calling for help. Just then, the magma pool at the bottom of the crater suddenly surged with an even larger magma pillar. The Red Death had fully emerged. Thanks for watching.